stand in honor of America with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I can have the roll call, please. Mr. Conway.
Here.
Ms. Doherty.
Here.
Ms. Fatacanti.
Here.
Mr. Leary.
Here. Leahy.
Leahy, I'm sorry. Mr. Leary.
Here. Here.
Oh, and Ms. Martin. Okay. We have a quorum, and I would just like to, first of all, welcome everyone to these interviews. We're very happy that you're here, and to the viewing audience at home as well. I want to personally thank Susan Mulligan for just being a tremendous help to all these interviews, prior to the interviews, and Susan, your professionalism has been great, absolutely great. And I also like to thank Ann Murphy and Jean Franco as well from the Superintendent Central Office. Thank you so much for being a tremendous help during these interviews. And to the parents who are here this evening, and to the parents who attended all the meetings to help us get through this point in time. And I want to thank also City Solicitor Christine O'Connor, who is here as well to offer any legal advice we might need. First of all, this is a special meeting. And the purpose of this special meeting is to interview candidates for the position of Superintendent of Lowell Public Schools. This evening, we will interview Mr. Schlickman and Dr. Wendy Jack. I am now going to turn the meeting over to Susan Mulligan, who will conduct the interviews because I'll be sitting down here at the desk, being part of that interview process. Susan Mulligan, thank you for your help and your professionalism, and the meeting is now yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your kind words. I'd like to very briefly explain the process that we'll be going through. That being that each candidate will be brought into the chambers and offered the opportunity to be interviewed by our esteemed school committee. Each candidate will have the opportunity to put together a 5-minute opening statement. They will also have the opportunity to put together a 5-minute closing statement. Each school committee member will ask up to 3 questions of the candidate, and each question will be asked in alphabetical order of the school committee's name, beginning with John Leahy. I am very happy to be part of this process, and I know that our committee is anxious to begin. So our first candidate will be Mr. Paul Schlickman. He is currently the coordinator of research, testing, and assessment for the Lowell Public Schools. He works in the curriculum office. So I would like to introduce Mr. Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Schlickman, do you have a 5-minute opening statement?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, members of the school committee, good evening, and thank you for inviting me here today to make my case as to why I should be the next superintendent of the Lowell Public Schools. Yesterday, the Lowell Sun ran an editorial. Actually, it was a column where the question was asked, is there a school leader in the House? And I'm here to say yes. And I am here to say I am the best qualified candidate and the best leader for this school system at this time. I'm here to say that I have a vision for the schools, and I'm going to call it the third vision for the modern schools in Lowell, because the first vision was the vision of George Sapasaris, who had a vision of equity, who had a vision of new buildings, who had a vision of starting the movement of this system into the 21st century. And the second vision of the system was the vision of Carla Baer, who looked inside the system and built capacity and brought in quality people and looked at curriculum and looked at systems and did the things within the system to put it on the right path. My third vision is a vision to maintain that momentum of the two previous leaders that have started us on a path to excellence, to maintain that vision and come with the third vision, which is a vision of confidence in the community and support in the community. It is a vision of taking the final steps that are necessary to making this the best school system in the state. And I'm not saying the best urban school system in the state, I'm saying the best school system in the state. Last week at my first interview, I made the case that we are 25% suburban. And you know that. You walk the streets of Lowell knocking on doors and ringing doorbells and meeting voters. You know we have suburban neighborhoods and urban neighborhoods. We have suburban challenges and urban challenges. So does every community. So does Arlington. So does Boston. Some communities meet those challenges well, some do not. Springfield does not. And you can see the suburban neighborhoods within the city falling into despair. That did not happen in Lowell. There's a great number of people in this city, middle-class residents of the city, who believe in the city, who maintain their belief in the city and the schools. 74 people we've identified as being employees of the district in a clerical or teaching role who have access to our data management system, who are also parent contacts. That says a lot for what we do. We have a lot of potential. So what's the difference between us and Lexington? I contend not very much. Lexington participates in the MEDCO program, and what they do is they bring urban and disadvantaged children into their system because they expose them to high standards in a suburban system. And my formula and my vision for this system is that we're going to take advantage of the fact that we are an urban and suburban system. We are going to take advantage of the 25% of our population. It is just as suburban as any other district in the state. We are going to hold them to the highest standards in the state. We are going to compete with the best districts in the state. And we are going to bring all children up to that vision. Just like Lexington. Just like Lexington brings the urban children who come into their system up to their standards, we will set the highest standards and bring our children up there as well. I know this system as well as anybody. I know the people in the system as well as anybody. I can start on July 1 with the hard work without having to learn the geography and learn the people. I've built 6 years of work in the system where I've gained the respect of the teachers, the principals, the school clerks of this community. I hope I've built the respect of this school committee by making presentations to you that are honest and factual. And I would like very much to be able to take the broad set of skills that I have acquired over my career and put them to work for this city and for the children of Lowell. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Schlickman.
Thank
We're
you.
going to begin the questioning with Mr. Leahy.
Thank you. Good evening, Paul. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure.
My first question would be, could you describe your experience in developing a budget, selling the budget to, say, the school committee? Describe how you would set priorities for your administrators as they develop their budget to present to you as superintendent.
Yeah, that's at least a three-part question, and I probably won't answer them all at this one pass because I know that there are a lot of questions coming. But I'll try to sketch that out because I've had experience in budgeting in different types of districts. And the thing that I will say is there's a big difference between a city system and a town municipal system in terms of budget deadlines. And I've also served on a regional vocational school committee, which has another set of rules and standards. If you're sitting on a regional vocational school committee right now, you've got to have a budget done because you probably had it done in January because you have to meet state guidelines for presentation. If you're doing a town budget, you'd have to have it done right around now. You're finalizing it March, April because you need to have a completed budget for town meeting. In the city, we have an advantage. We can take a long time. We can go in mid-June and finalize a budget. And that's an advantage, but that's also a disadvantage if you don't take advantage of the fact that you do have the time to take a look at your cherry sheets and your local aid accounts and look at the situation and have extended conversations with the appropriating authority, which is the city council. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to sit right here in this room and we're going to set forth our priorities because as superintendent, it doesn't really matter what I think. I am the agent of the school committee. I'm the employee of the school committee. It is the school committee who votes this budget, and it is a statement of the school committee's priorities. It's your biggest policy statement. So we need to sit here in this room and work together and to develop the priorities that you're bringing in from the community, because that's where you're accountable. And then what we're going to do is go back into the system and go and meet with the principals. We're going to meet with the central office people and take a look at what we're doing, and we're going to align that with the priorities of the district. We're also going to take a look at how we're doing things and see if we can't do things better. One of the things I really want to take a look at is some of the duplication and wasted effort that we have in the Lowell Public Schools. I'm going to raise you one question. Why do we have two email systems in Lowell? Why do we have two servers, two domain names? Why does Lowell High have a different email server? I mean, there's no reason for this. There's absolutely no reason for this except that maybe a long time ago when we first set up the system, it made sense. And because the connectivity between Lowell High and the rest of the system can be spotty at times. We're paying a price for that right now. It's very difficult for us to move email from central office to Lowell High because sometimes there's a break between the two systems, and we're going to fix that. We're going to look at everything we're doing that's duplication or inefficient. And I'll even extend that challenge one step further. And it's a bold one because it scares me too. Last year, the town came into Arlington and said, school committee, we'd like to merge the IT department. And I looked at them and said, oh, over my dead body. We had the better department. We had it happening. They had problems and they wanted to merge with us. Well, guess what? We considered that one. And we did merge it, and the system's better, it's more efficient, and we've broken down barriers. And there are a lot of these barriers, both within the system and between system and City Hall, that need to be dismantled. And I think that we're also going to be charged with going after those efficiencies and making the budget. So we're going to do two things. We're going to align what we're doing in the system against the priorities that we are setting in this room, and then we are going to go aggressively look at how we do business, how we buy things, and look for ways to cut those costs.
Mr. Leary.
Good evening, Paul. How you doing?
Thank you.
Good.
I'm doing great.
Good. Kind of unusual having you face this way in terms of having questioning.
Yes.
Okay. Quick question for me from a managerial standpoint. If you're our superintendent, you'd be managing at least 26 or 27 direct employees, and obviously you're close to 2,000 full employees. The question I have is, have you ever had to counsel or write up an employee or subordinate for poor performance and have to develop an action plan for that particular employee and counsel them to improve their performance? Were you successful? Can you give me an example of where you were successful in improving performance, and in the times where unfortunately, did you have to dismiss an employee because performance was not improved?
The answer to that question, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, is no. I have not had to go and write up an action plan on an employee because basically, right now in this role here, I am much more advisory than a line authority. I mean, I've got tremendous influence in the system in many ways because people listen to what I have to say. When I first came into the system, I'd go into the school buildings and people would tell me, well, let me start the other way around. I'd go in there and say, well, you know, I'm from Central and I'm here to help. And you know what kind of a response I got to that. I quickly learned to change that language. I quickly learned to change that to Ted Rurak sent me. And it worked. It worked. Ted was so widely respected in the system that by having him in my back pocket when I needed him, I was able to get some level of entree and also to maintain and build a sense of respect within the system. Now, I haven't written up an employee, but during one of my evaluation visits in one of the school buildings, we went in for a one-day site evaluation in the elementary and middle schools, and I was a member of that evaluation team. And we saw teaching in that building which was significantly below standards. It was a standard that disrespected children, and it was obvious to the evaluators, myself and one other member of this staff, who went into that school and saw it. I'm a trained evaluator. I'm trained to go into buildings and take a look at what's on the wall, what's going on in the classroom, get a quick sense of what's going on, ask some critical questions, and figure out what's happening. And when I went to that classroom, I saw something that was very tragic happening. And what I did in my role and my function was to advise the deputy superintendent, who took the steps to meet the challenge with the principal to make the change in that classroom to have better instruction. And I'll tell you something, a teacher is no longer employed by the system.
Committeewoman Martin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.
My question really would focus on your educational philosophy that you would be bringing to this position. Obviously, that's of critical concern. What I'd like to do is ask you to describe briefly, given the time constraints, what your philosophy of education really is, and if you can give us any kind of theoretical or research background that really grounds your personal theory and informs that personal theory.
I guess I would say theoretically, I'm looking at the 21st century as a high technology, high collaboration era. And you can't, I mean, we were asked to read here, The World is Flat, and in Arlington we read it as well as a school committee effort. And it is sobering to think about the way the economy is moving to the skills that are required for students who are going into the work world. So that's my philosophy, is to really take a look at the needs of the 21st century and prepare children to work in a world where they're going to have to go for additional training, where they're going to have to learn a second and third career during their course of their employment. And not only in a, I'm going to say this again, urban and suburban system. Urban systems get hung up that we need to do math and ELA. It's all about math and English language arts. Well, it isn't. It's about all the other subjects that come to play. It's about the arts. It's about music. It's about speaking a second language. It's a matter of making cultural competency so that when you go out into the world, you can interact well with others. There are lots of skills that need to be brought into the students in this 21st century. And my philosophy then is to take two essential benchmarks. Is the high school diploma and the value we place on that diploma, and use that as the starting point for planning, and secondly, to use third grade literacy as the second benchmark, because if you achieve two things, if you achieve a diploma with value, and my idea of value is a credential that will allow a child to go into the state university system or to Middlesex Community College without remediation, without parents paying for a remedial course before you get to the good stuff. You've got that credential, and that third graders are going to pass that literacy standard and be literate at third grade. Those are the two benchmarks within the system that philosophically I view as the critical part. Yes?
Could I do my follow-up at this point then?
Mm-hmm.
When we set the rules, right? Okay. Right, this is it. I know. This is my one follow-up.
Okay.
Okay. You made an interesting point. You said that there's more to it in an urban setting, more than the math and English. So with the constraints, time constraints of the day, the school day, and MCAS testing, how do we get more out of the school day? Could you expand on your answer? How are you going to get more out of the children? Or
Okay, first of all, I'm going to use one of Carla's pet terms, which is twofers, is that you can't just teach literacy. You've got to teach literacy with a connection to something else. I taught third grade. I know that third graders love nonfiction. So you can do a lot of teaching in areas other than literacy when you're doing a literacy block. So that you need to look for twofers, the obvious twofers. We need to bust open the school day, let's be honest. I went to Japan last summer as an emissary of the Arlington Sister City program. And at our own expense, we go over there once a year and we send kids, and kids come to Arlington for a visit. It's totally run out of our community education department, totally taxpayer neutral. It's a self-supporting program. And we looked at the way they do things in Japan, and it's not that different in many ways, but they do have an extensive after-school program, which is essentially a non-academic program. This is where you get a lot of the arts, music, and athletics brought into the program. So we have to find some way to extend the school day. The other thing we need to do, particularly at the high school, is take a look at the block of time we're operating. An 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. school doesn't meet the needs of our children. I mean, think about the population of kids who need to work to support the family. When I went to undergraduate, I was doing a full program, and I was teaching as a student teacher, and I was driving a cab at nights. Spring break for me was a chance to catch up on sleep. A lot of our kids are in that situation right now because they walk out that door at 2 o'clock and they're going down the street to a job. Or they need to work during the day. We need to expand the school hours at the high school. Maybe you don't take more than 8 courses or 7 courses, or even if we go to block scheduling, a fewer number of courses. But you can do it over extended periods of time, and we get into the cooperative relationships with Middlesex. Maybe some of the honors programs for seniors are college credit courses that are paid through a small tuition that you could transfer in when you go off to your 4-year institution. There are lots of ways to break the barriers that we seem to be locked into right now that we need to explore, and the only way we can really do that is to expand the partnerships we have, particularly with Middlesex and UMass Lowell in that regard, and with the community agencies who can help us develop extended day.
thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Mayor Caulfield.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Schlickman,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm very happy to be interviewing you this evening, and very happy you're one of the 4 candidates.
Thank you.
Leading question.
Yes.
If you become the new superintendent of Lowell Public Schools,
Yes.
how are you going to improve the school system? What programs are you going to implement? How are you going to address discipline? And are you willing to emulate the programs we have at some middle schools and elementary schools, and bring those programs that are successful, bring those programs to the entire school district?
Okay, the answer is yes. If I find something that's working in one school, I certainly want to move it to another. If I find something at the high school that's working that we might be able to move into the middle school level, we're going to do that. We need to have tighter connections, particularly between the high school and the rest of the K-8 system. We need to go take a look at the Lyceum as being a strong component of the system and figure out ways to go and support that through the middle level so that more and more students are prepared to do that level of work as they get into the high school. We need to take a look at the school safety programs that we have. And I walk through the halls of Lowell High very often. And I've worked in Boston. I've been in many high schools. This is a safe, calm school. I've done the school safety data. This is a safe, calm district. We have good people who are doing good things. There's a lot of supports that are built into the system. Do we always get it right? No. Do we have a gang issue in the city of Lowell? Yes. Do we need to maintain cooperative relationships with the police department? You bet. In Arlington, our superintendent, the first thing he did was made friends with the chief of police, and that's the most essential relationship he's made, because you never can tell when something's going to happen. We had a child suicide in our town, and it was a very tragic event. It related to drugs and alcohol. It had an impact on the community, and the fact is that when the superintendent and the high school principal and the police chief were on the same page and had a good working relationship at the get-go, we were able to handle that situation effectively. And so that teaming with outside agency partners, particularly through the police department, we can do a lot to maintain safety.
I just want to interject one more.
Yes.
Mr. Schlickman, I think I did ask, what programs would you implement to make the system better? Did you have any ideas on how you could improve the program?
The answer right now is no, and I'll tell you why, is that this district has implemented a ton of programs over the past 6 years. And I know the strain that we've had on the professional staff in the system. We have demanded a lot from them. So what we're going to need to do is, instead of my coming in with a program and saying, hi, I'm your new superintendent and I have a wonderful program that I want to institute, is we're going to go into the schools and we're going to issue a challenge. We're going to say, here's the benchmark, here's where we are, here's where we need to be. What can we do to get there? And we're going to engage the teachers, we're going to engage the leaders in the school, we're going to engage the parents, and we're going to even have the conversation with the school committee to come up with a solution that's going to meet the requirements of everybody, because my solution is surely likely to be the one that's not going to work because it's imposed.
Thank you.
Committeeman Conway.
Good evening, Mr. Selectman.
Good evening, Mr. Conway.
I congratulate you on being one of the finalists.
Thank you.
For the superintendent's job. The question I have is, do you believe in and would you support promoting from within? And please explain the factors that influence your position on this question.
I think the school committee should hire an insider. That said, and I'd be a great one. I mean, I got to tell you, you know. That said, yes, I believe in hiring from within wherever practical. Now, I will tell you that there are a couple of barriers to some promotions from within. And I will tell you some barriers that I've seen that I've overcome, particularly from my policy and advocacy side on the school committee. First of all, one of the unique problems we have in Lowell is we have buildings where the principal makes less money than the assistant principal. So what's the incentive for an assistant principal to become a principal? Longer work year, no union security, less pay? Nah, I don't think so. I think that we've got to take a look at some of the structural issues. People who are within the system know that the assistant principal's job is usually a better job than the principal's job. Now, let's get back to hiring principals and assistant principals and other leaders within the system. In Arlington, I was very critical of our superintendent because she was just hiring people and announcing that at a school committee meeting, and I don't think that's right. I think there's got to be more transparency and more process. Now, you can make the case that, I will make the case that the school committee defines by policy how we hire, between that and the collective bargaining agreement, because the union will dictate certain rules for going and hiring people for promotions. For example, moving up from a teacher position to an assistant principal. Now, we've developed an effective pool of educational leaders among our literacy specialists, instructional specialists. We have the pool in the system. But if I were to come to you with the responsibility of making the appointment, because you're going to evaluate me on the results of the school, and I've got to make sure that the person who's taking that job buys into what I expect out of a principal, using a principal, for example. But if we have a principal vacancy or any other leadership vacancy that the school committee thinks is important, I have the ability, the authority, and in fact the desire to make sure that one member of the school committee serves on that screening committee. Because if there's a member of the school committee on that preliminary screening committee, there'll be somebody in the room who will not be exposing the inner workings of the preliminary search, because that is confidential. We have to respect the rights of people who are applying for jobs. But if I say, we went through this list of people, this is the best candidate for the job, there'll be one person sitting among you who will say, okay, yeah, I was there, I saw the process, we got a good result. And not that you're going to agree with my pick, but at least you'll see from the get-go the kind of pool that we had to choose from and where we got to. Now, the other thing is, I'm very firm on developing people from within, and I think that we've started to do a really good job of that. The fact is that we've put in initial training, and we've got that for principals and assistant principals. And the more we can bring our leaders within the buildings into department heads, into instructional support roles that lead into the principalship and the assistant principalship, the better we're going to be. And I'm going to make sure those programs are effective. So yes, there are great, talented people in the system, and I want to take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committeewoman Doherty.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Schlickman.
Good evening.
You spoke very eloquently about your vision for Lowell schools. In fact, I made a couple of notes of 3 points that really struck me. You'd like to build confidence and support for the schools in our community. You would like to bring all children up to a high level of learning and performance, and take the final steps to build on the momentum of your predecessor, the previous superintendents. My question to you then is, what is your concrete plan to do those things? Can you specifically tell us the steps that you would address to bring that vision to reality?
I think there are two sets of steps that we have to take. I think the steps within the system are to look at everything we do in terms of how does it affect students? How does it affect student learning? And we've built the infrastructure. In fact, I have been the one who has built the infrastructure for looking at student data and putting it in the hands of principals and teachers. We've gone a long way so that a child goes into Lowell High School right now, a teacher can click onto X2 and take a look at how they did in the middle school and how their attendance records are. And a housemaster at Lowell High can take a look at a kid who's absent on September 5th and get a sense whether or not they had an attendance problem last year just with a click of a mouse, rather than having to sort of guess as to what the situation might be. So I would make sure that we are on track with teachers who are doing significant lesson study, and you're going to hear about Japanese lesson study. We're doing it here in Lowell. Magali Ronan is doing that with math teachers in the system. And there's reason for doing it. It's good, it improves teaching, and teachers who want to do this benefit from it. So we're going to focus on improving the teaching craft. We're going to maintain what is the best professional development program in the state, and don't take my word for it. Wait till the EQA report comes. It is an exemplar. We do well at hiring. We do well at bringing people into the system. We do well at professional development. We're going to maintain that momentum because the quality of the teacher and the quality of the teaching and the support we give for teachers is going to make it happen on ground level. We're also going to benchmark, because I will tell you the one thing is, it's easy if you think you're an urban system and you're the least urban of the urban schools to think that you're wonderful, rather than benchmarking to that suburban standard. So what I'm going to do is make sure that our teachers and our administrators go take a look at successful schools outside of Lowell to take a look at what they're doing and what those standards are, and then work with them to collaborate to improve the instruction to those standards. Now, what am I going to end up doing? Besides maintaining the momentum we have with the great people who are working in this district, is I'm going to be out on the streets full time. I'm going to be talking to people. I'm going to be selling what's going on in the system, because it is very, very, very difficult work to be a teacher in the society right now. The demands are very high, and you often get beaten up. And to know that your superintendent is standing out there and going to meetings, going to outside agencies, going to wherever you can find somebody who will listen. I'll go to the opening of an envelope if I have to go sell the system within this community. So that's going to be one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to promote the teachers. It's not about me. It's about the teachers and the people who are working in the system, and we're going to promote that. Now, I've got one other thing that I'm going to use as a gauge, and I'm going to call it my Ward 5 Precinct 1 rule. And for those of you who know Ward 5 Precinct 1, is that up in that neighborhood, the city line cuts through the streets. So if you go over to Endicott, Farragut, Emory, Sparks, Gilmore, or Harlan streets, you have houses with the city line running through them. You know what the rule is. Where the kid's pillow is where they go to school. I want the pillow on our side of the street. Not only do I want the pillow on our side of the street, I want the houses to be of greater value on our side of the line. Not only do I want our houses to have a higher value on our side of the line, I also want to reduce the achievement gap, and I want to reduce the value gap. And we're going to reduce the value gap by making sure that we close the gap between the value of a home on Andover Street and a comparable home in Andover. That will be a measure of my effectiveness at building the system and building the confidence and building the community support for these schools. And we are going to do that. I know the data for the system. I know how we stand if we take a look at our non-poverty kids compared to our neighboring towns. We're comparable in many places. We've got some great things happening in the middle schools. We need to tell that story, but we need not to stop there. I don't want to compete with Drake, and I want to compete with Lexington. And people will know that, and we will sit here in this room and we will evaluate ourselves on our ability to do that. And because we have our eye on the prize, we are going to get there.
Thank you. I wonder if I could just follow that up
Yes.
with a quick, what evidence can you offer from your past that demonstrate your ability to envision and implement a plan that led to improved student learning? There's something from your past that could speak to your ability to envision and implement a plan.
Absolutely. The whole student data system in this system, there was none when I arrived here in 2001. We are now looking at student achievement data on a regular basis. I went over to the Daily School last week and watched a group of instructional and literacy specialists talking about how they're using assessment from the SRI system to go and benchmark kids and help them with their reading and help them to choose books and help them to promote literacy. And you know what? Do you know why we have that system? In Lowell a few years ago, every time a new kid came into the door, what they did was they were invited back to the Parent Information Center to take some sort of crazy literacy test which went into a folder. We took the money from that and put that into SRI instead, so that if the child walks in the door in a school that day, they can get a quick down and dirty assessment and figure out where they're reading so that the teacher will have something to work with. And not only by converting that, we can now use that for every child. And because we're using that with every child, we can go take a look at children for 3 years. And because we're doing that, I was able to write reports for you talking about how children are making years growth in literacy. And we did that. We did that by using better information, and I put that system together for Lowell.
Thanks, Mr. Schlickman. I
Thank you.
appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Lowell High School is the second largest high school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, something I know that you are very familiar with. It's actually larger than some school districts in our Commonwealth.
Many.
How would you ensure the education of each of the 3,900 students at the high school? How would you make sure that each of them receives the very best education possible, which leads them to becoming successful adults?
Ultimately, it's not the size of the school that matters, it's the relationship between the adults and the students. Any high school has approximately the same student-to-teacher ratio. We need to build those relationships differently by being a larger high school. And we've taken some constructive steps to do that. We've established the Freshman Academy, and we've devoted resources there to ensure that kids in their most difficult year are going to have support within the system. Now, the size has a disadvantage and an advantage. Now, the advantage we have is that we have the ability to offer many, many more programs than a smaller high school, so that if a child find something that they fall in love with. We have more courses and more opportunities for them to find something that will motivate them within the context of the high school. Obviously, in that context, we also need to make sure that we effectively use our small learning communities. I mean, it's nice to have houses in the school, but do the houses really have an identity that's meaningful for the children? Do they really feel connected to those houses? Do the teachers feel connected to those houses? Are we using that as an effective system to break down the school into smaller components? I think we're making progress in doing that with the academy programs, but I don't know that we're all the way there yet. And I think we have to examine the way we schedule in the high school to see if we can't make a better and more effective use of the houses. I mean, the housemasters and the guidance counselors are teamed together, and that's a very, very important, very effective way to go, because you've got 3 adults who are responsible for a core component of these children, and that they're going to be followed and they're going to be looked after. And if we can improve our technological ability to help them to communicate within the school to the teachers, that's also going to be a step to make it work. But ultimately, everything we do to find what a child loves, to go and take advantage of that, if we grab them by the heart, the mind will follow. And we're going to have to go and find every way conceivable to do that and to build the adult relationships. And we're going to go into the high school and talk to the people who are the experts, the people who see those kids on a day-to-day basis, and brainstorm and plan ways that they can work together to go and improve these connections.
Mr. Leahy.
Thank you. My next question is also has to deal with the high school.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to be selected superintendent, one of your first major tasks would be to appoint a new leader of the high school. How would you go about this? What would you be looking for in that person? And what would be 3 of the most important changes that you feel would need to be made over there? And please consider that, the budget constraints. You know what I mean? If we had all the money in the world, we could make a lot of changes, but keeping in mind with the budget constraints.
I'm looking for somebody with a passion for education. I know that there's a lot of very passionate people at the high school. So I'm going to go, first of all, I'm going to go and try to sell the people who are in the high school with the idea that this is a calling for them as well. I'm going to talk to the incumbent headmaster and make sure that he's got the ability to stay with us, to go and help us through the transition, to help define what he views as the needs for moving forward. I'm going to ensure that the teachers of the school, the parents, and the school committee go and take a look at what they view as the vision for moving the high school forward. Because there are definitely a couple of places, there are a couple of different directions we can go with the high school. I know there's been some conversation about trying to do a new building off-site out of downtown. I don't know if that's a good idea, and that's not my decision to make right now. It's really a decision the community is going to have to make. But I want somebody who's going to be really knowledgeable about teaching and learning and who can inspire teaching and learning among the staff, who knows how to communicate with the core leadership to go and make sure that they're working on teaching and learning and improving the way the kids learn at the high school, who has sort of enough of a spatial knowledge to be able to go and talk scheduling with me and make sure the schedules are running and things work. I want somebody that the community is going to fall in love with. Bill Samaras has done tremendous things because he's been able to engage the community, and he's been able to go out into this city and get people to contribute and support the schools. And we need him as an ambassador, and we need him to teach the connections to the next leader of that school. But ultimately, I want somebody who's going to be on board with a vision of a high-value diploma and making the school work for the children so that they all make it to that high-value diploma, make it into the next level, make it into the university system. I love the city. I love the children of the city. I want to support the kids from all backgrounds. The one thing I will not tolerate is second-generation poverty for students who are coming through this school. And that's going to be part of the mission, and the high school principal is going to need to buy into this to make sure that all students are coming out of this school ready to go and be competitive in the world, to be competitive in getting a higher education, and to stay in Lowell, to support Lowell, and to make it a better city.
Committeeman Leary.
Thanks, Paul. I'd like to expand on what Mr. Leahy's question was, not as a follow-up, but as my question. Instead of the high school, one of the most important things that you'll be doing if you are selected our superintendent is managing, hiring our principals. And we have 23 schools with 23 principals who will be implementing a lot of the great philosophy that you've been, been really expanding upon tonight. One, what type of criteria would you be looking for in hiring an individual? And two, can you give an example of your experience, not only in the Lowell public school system, but in your other systems, of a time where you've hired an individual and mentored them and helped really kind of develop them as an employee, and give an example, a positive example, hopefully, of where they may have went from there. Thank you.
Okay. I will go back and talk about the vision and commitment to Lowell, and a vision and commitment to the way we do business in Lowell. I mean, we are putting people through NISL training for a reason, is because it is a sound, data-driven, performance-driven, high-standards program for developing school leaders. So I'm really going to look for somebody who's had experience in the NISL program, if I can get one. If not, I need somebody who's going to go and fall into the belief structure that will enable them to be successful in going through the NISL program. And let me just say, for anyone who doesn't know what NISL means, it's the National Institute for School Leadership. And the Department of Education is bought into the program and is bringing it out to urban districts, and Lowell has been one of the pioneers in terms of doing it. So I'm going to look for that framework, and also a core belief in all children are going to learn, and all children are going to succeed, and all children are going to get to that standard by the time they reach the high school diploma. That kind of passion I'm going to insist upon. And you can tell pretty quickly whether or not a person is going to look at a school and say, well, that's okay, or I'm going to be able to help my teachers to do better. I'm going to work with my teachers and do better. I'm going to look for people who are going to be collaborative with the teachers and able to build them into a team in a cooperative atmosphere, so that they're going to feel engaged in the work that we need to do. Have I done this? I hired a superintendent. I hired a superintendent in Arlington. It was a very controversial hire on one level, and it wasn't on another. As chair of the school committee, I ran the search. We hired a non-traditional candidate. There are 3 non-traditional candidates for superintendent who have taken jobs in Massachusetts. That's through the Broad Fellowship Program. Arlington, Swampscott, and Marlborough. We hired one. I mentored him.
Just was like, I missed the part, that program you were saying again. Can you say that again?
Okay. It is the Broad Fellowship Program.
That's okay.
And what they do is they take mid-career people. They take people from non-traditional areas, be it from industry or from the military or from promising people in public education, and train them well. Well, we also hired an assistant superintendent at the time, and I was on the screening committee for that. We hired a middle school principal from Gloucester. I figured that, okay, our superintendent had never been a superintendent and came in through the private sector. It'll be good to have somebody who knows how to run a school and has education experience. Well, it turns out that the superintendent probably knows more about education theory and moving a system forward than anybody else I met. And he's also got the business skills. I mean, it was a true surprise. The one thing we didn't get with a business person, and I will be very frank and honest, he made a very difficult and very unpopular personnel decision in dismissing a principal, and there's been controversy in the community for over a year because of that. The controversy comes from people in the community saying, here's a man who never taught for a day and came in and made this decision. and who think he's a cold businessman. I tell you, he is one of the warmest and most caring and thoughtful people I know. But the people in the community don't know that. And the mentoring that I've done for him to help him to be a better superintendent, and his one weakness is the skill to go out into the community and make the connections and be visible enough so that when you do the difficult thing, people will have the understanding of who you are and why you made that decision. And mentoring the superintendent through that process has been probably one of the more challenging things I've done as a public person. And I'll tell you, as a superintendent, if you hire me, and I hope you do, I will need your support in making those introductions to the community and explaining what we're doing, because you are the ambassadors of the school system to the community, and you bring the community values into the school system. And I know that, and I know I'm going to need your help.
Just a quick follow-up to that, then you would your philosophy in hiring include outside folks from this Brogue Institute to come in and maybe lead some of our elementary schools or middle schools and perhaps the high school in the future?
I'm open to anyone who has the capacity, but as I said before, this is a very special system, and we're going to make it an exemplary system. And I really think that given the outside training that we've gone through, given the NISL training that we've gone through, given the high performance attitude that we're trying to infuse in the system, I think that the best candidates for a lot of leadership positions are going to come from people who are buying into what we're doing in here, who know the system, who know how it works, and are able to step in from day one. Mm-hmm.
Committeewoman Martin.
Thank you. For my second question, what I'd like to hear about, and I think you intimated about it a little earlier in one of the previous questions. Certainly, we're a district where we have implemented a number of different initiatives at every level of education and with varying degrees of success and buy-in. I think we all recognize that we're a district that's moving forward, and the kind of concepts that our teachers, teaching today is a very different thing than it was certainly 10 years ago. And the additional stress and challenge of implementing a differentiated instruction model in every one of our classrooms, of being able to incorporate approaches that really do connect with students based on their learning styles rather than based on a teacher's teaching style, I think is really one of the critical things we're going to need to continue improving on. Recognizing that it does pose real challenges and legitimate challenges for our teachers, how would you propose moving forward to be able to strengthen the initiatives that we have in place currently and not stop that forward momentum, recognizing that we need to, how do we find that balance? I think it's something we've struggled with. So how would you propose finding the appropriate balance between aggressive forward movement and yet being able to be cognizant of what we're asking of our frontline staff?
Yeah, I think that that's really sort of the critical aspect that I talked about with not bringing in a lot of new programs and a lot of new initiatives. I think that we've really gone through and tried a lot of things, and where things have been successful, we've just energized on it. And we've brought in a new math curriculum, and it's working. You could see the math scores in the middle school particularly taking a real shot up last year. And I think that, that these scores are going to continue to go up. We've updated the program. So there's been new professional development surrounding the update of the math program. We've worked around literacy programs. I think we're ready to go and take a look at doing things a little differently in certain aspects, particularly where we've got some reading first skills and some non-reading first schools, and trying to unify the program. I think what we need to do is take a step back. I think what we need to do is continue on what we're doing and doing it well, and analyze our performance, and then see what we need to do and get buy-in from the staff as to what's working and what's not. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be stagnant. We're moving forward now, and what we need to do is we need to maintain the momentum. And I think that as long as we don't start throwing up barriers or getting the wheels out of alignment by hitting too many potholes, that we're going to keep on going in the right direction. The next challenge that I think that we need to do to implement is technology, because every place I go, I'm talking to people who say, we're buying this software, and we've got great software that we can use to differentiate instruction, but the computers won't run it. And I read Richard Howe's blog, who said that maybe I was sort of letting out something I didn't intend to. No, I intend to say this. I intend to say that the state of technology in the district is in poor shape, and we've made tough budget choices in favor of other things as opposed to technology. Well, what we need to do now is we need to come back and say, if we're serious about differentiation and meeting the individual needs of the students, if we're serious about taking students from poverty and making sure they have the experience that their more privileged brethren have in the classroom, we need to aggressively improve the technology in the system. And I admire the Laptops for Lowell program. We need to go and take that to another effort to engage the community in terms of discussing what kind of technology is a prerequisite for each classroom, and then gathering community support for doing it. In Arlington, we do 5% of our total town budget as a capital expenditure, and I think we need to look at some kind of a model where we're ensuring that our landlords, the city, who owns the building, are maintaining and improving the technology. When we build a new school, we get the technology. We need to institute methods that we're replacing that on a regular basis.
My follow-up question right now? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm glad regarding the technology came up again. What would you do, if we were hired as superintendent tomorrow, what would your first plan of action be? I mean, giving the budget constraints. I don't see 5% of our budget coming in at this point, although that may be your recommendation. What would you do tomorrow to try to align our computer systems with the programs we're trying to implement?
Well, first of all, is that there was such surprise in the outside community that somebody'd actually make this bold statement that we're buying curriculum and we don't have the technology to run it. First of all, acknowledging the problem and putting it out there is the first step to solving the problem. And the fact is that if Dick Howe's blog was so surprised by somebody making that statement, I think that we're missing an important point. So that is our entry point into the community, and this is where community partnerships are important, because the employers in Lowell want technologically literate people to come to work for them. Be them the high school students who are going to work from 3 to 11 or doing other jobs for them, or the people they're hiring once they gain degrees at a diploma from Lowell High. So we're going to need to go into the business community, engage them, and have them help us to solve the problem. Secondly, I'm going to have to look at the appropriating authority, because I will tell you that if you are going to a town meeting or a city council and say, well, we need more money for the schools, the typical response is, well, okay, yeah, we hear that every year. I mean, tell us something new. And then they don't give you the money, or they give you some money and you go back and you go do the work. And I will say I'm very appreciative of the council is that we've reduced the gap between our minimum local contribution and our actual spending tremendously, from $6 million to a couple of $100,000 over the past few years. And I'm very appreciative of the movement that the city has made in terms of closing that gap. But what we need to do is we need to make convincing arguments to appropriating authorities and business leaders that this particular investment, above and beyond the typical operating expenses for the city, as a capital expenditure, as a condition for maintaining our schools, is essential to the core mission of the system, and that we work together to find a way to implement it.
Committeewoman Martin? Mayor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Susan. Mr. Schlickman, you have an excellent resume and a great educational career. But it says in your report here, Lowell Public Schools, District Coordinator for Research, Testing, and Assessment, Office of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, responsible for improving student achievement through analysis, maintenance, decimation, and reporting of the district student performance and accountability. Now, as you well know, we have 14,000 students who attend the Lowell Public Schools. And we are very fortunate to have many students who make the honor roll, attend the Latin Lyceum, and they attend a higher school of learning. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yes.
They attend many high-ranking colleges throughout the country. I'm concerned about the student who might be lost, who might fall in the cracks, who's having a hard time grasping history, science, math, reading, the ability to concentrate. We have some schools that are underperforming. Now, you indicated it was your responsibility for student improvements. If you become the superintendent, how would you address this important issue?
There are many ways to address it, and let me tell you how I'd look at it. First of all, we place barriers in front of students every day as educators. We have expectations for students which are often not high enough. When I was on the school committee in Arlington, we had a tracked and tiered system, and we had prerequisites that were rigid that prevented kids from getting into courses. Well, we had a budget crisis when the state cut our local aid 20%. We eliminated a track as a result. As a result of eliminating that track, we had a lot of kids who were going to be pushed down a level, and that was wrong. So how do you go and address the kids who would not have gotten into those upper level classes? Guess what? We took down the barriers for budgetary reasons. That was the excuse. We tracked the kids. Would they have met the prerequisite before? Yes or no? The kids who didn't meet previous prerequisites, who now had the ability to go and sign a disclosure statement saying, I know what I know what the skills I need to start this course are, I know what the expectations are, I want to do this course. And you know, these kids did well. In Lowell, when we eliminated the bottom track at the high school, there was a lot of movement of kids up levels and a lot of movement of kids into the advanced classes. You know what? The year that there was an increase in the number of kids in the advanced classes in Lowell, actually MCAS scores and average grades went up because more kids were learning more. So the first thing we need to do is get out of the way of kids who have desire to learn things. We shouldn't be putting barriers up in front of them. Secondly, as I've been talking about with the issues of technology and differentiated instruction, what we need to do is we need to look at what the barriers are for specific kids to learning something. 29% of the children in this district are second language learners who are actively in an ESL or some sort of a support program. ESL is the wrong term, I know. I just slipped into the old language. We change language in education every 3 weeks. We need to acknowledge the challenge of second language learners. We need to acknowledge the dual responsibility to teach language along with the content area. I was at the Merklin School doing one of those evaluations and sat in a music class which was language rich. It was a beautiful class that kids who were second language learners and kids who were native English speakers who need support in language instruction were getting the support in the context of a music class and having fun doing it because the teacher was well trained on how to move language into the curriculum. This is one of the critical things we do. And if I will tell you that I think the city doesn't realize what a gem they have over at the Merklin School, and that people should take a look at that school and go in and see what's going on before they go into Parent Information Center and make a selection. Because I think many more parents would select that school if they knew just how wonderful that school was right now. But those are the strategies we need to do. We need to focus on differentiation. We need to focus on language development because of the large number of the second language learners in the district. And we need to be cognizant that if we need to teach children content area and English as a second language, that they may need more time. And the data in the system proves, and you asked for a portfolio of work, and one of the things that I did was the graduation rate report, that if we give the children the benefit of more time when they need assistance, that if they don't make it in 4 years, they do make it in 5 and sometimes even 6 years through the high school, that these kids persevere. These kids have desire. These kids need a hand, and we need to structure the way we're presenting our curriculum to them so they're able to succeed. But if we go and reach out and do frequent enough assessments so we know what their strengths and weaknesses are, so that we can pitch the instruction to where they are right now, and to do the good instruction that we need to do to overcome particularly the language issues that we find prevalent in this district, that these children will achieve.
So, Mrs. Schlickman, what you're telling me in this committee is you're satisfied
I'm never satisfied.
with the programs that we have.
I'm never satisfied.
So you're telling me there could be improvements?
There will be improvements. I mean, every time we do
No,
something.
you said there will be.
Oh, yes.
I want to hear from you, could there be improvements?
Yes, there can and there will, because the thing is.
In what areas?
Let me tell you, let me just tell you, that in every area, because I'll tell you one thing, is that as a teacher, if you're not being reflective as a professional in terms of what you're doing, what worked and what didn't, if you're not taking a look at your data as it comes in and constantly reflecting and looking at where you are and thinking about how to do things better, how to line your curriculum better, how to go and make it better the next time you do it. If you're not doing that, you're not doing your job. So that any time you do it, you're going to do it better. When I taught math at the high school level, my period 3 class always got a better lesson than my period 1 class because I learned something from teaching period 1. And it got to the point where I flipped the lessons around, so I teach period 3 first so that they wouldn't get the benefit of the good instruction. That's what good teachers do. This is what good educational leaders do. And if we're out there doing lesson study, looking at practice, looking at what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, we're going to do it better. If the programs we have right now are working, we're going to keep on doing it. If it's not, we are going to go look around for somebody who's doing it better. We're going to sit there, we're going to look at it, we're going to study it, we're going to figure out how they're doing it, we're going to bring it in here, and we're going to do it here.
Just one last comment. Do you agree with me that we do have some schools that are underperforming?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Schlickman and school committee members, I want to let you know that we will have 15 minutes before Mr. Schlickman makes his final statement. So I just want to caution our candidate, and I want to remind our school committee members of the time. So let's continue with Committeeman Conway.
Mr. Selectman,
Yes.
please elaborate on your views regarding the role of discipline in our schools, including your overall philosophy of discipline and your views on district-wide policy in this area. In a related question, how would you work with a principal that feels that punitive actions in the form of detention are not necessary at the middle school level?
Discipline, I think in a school, discipline comes from 2 areas. I think there are the typical kids being kids kind of discipline issues. And they'll test you all the time. I mean, you know that. You've done discipline. You're the expert. And the issues of discipline are coming from deeper needs, be they family issues, be they other troubles that are really insurmountable in many ways. It's a manifestation, a cry for help. So we really need to separate these 2 things out. I mean, clearly, I think that what we need to do is to ensure that throughout our system, that we are consistent in terms of stating what the rules are, so that, you know, something that's acceptable in one school is not acceptable in the other, so that homework is going to be consistent. Coming in late to school and late to class is going to be consistent, so that starting from kindergarten, that we're setting the stage for learning by making sure that it's a safe, secure, peaceful environment. Okay? Now, putting aside the kids who have significant issues because of family issues, what we need to do is we need to break down the division between the high school and the middle schools. I mean, we see the EQA report that's going to come out. The most critical thing in that report is tied to the fact that there are articulation issues between the high school and the middle school. And we've done a lot of work to make some connections, but I think we need to do more. And I don't get the sense that the high school headmasters or the freshman academy folks and the people in the middle school are spending sufficient time together coming to consensus. That's the first step. I mean, we need to have We need to have ninth grade teachers meeting with eighth grade teachers. We need to have ninth grade teachers meeting with 10th grade teachers. We need to have ninth grade teachers at a conference time being able to go and take some time to go back to the sending school in eighth grade and showing them the student work and showing them what the standards are in the ninth grade so that they're able to better prepare. But if we don't have consensus between the high school and the middle school, or the middle school and the elementary school, as to what our standards are and how we're going to address certain situations, the solution is to get people in the room together, get the paper on the wall charts, and come up with some sort of a consistent viewpoint that we can all agree to, so that children who walk into the freshman academy at ninth grade aren't all of a sudden going to act in a different manner than they did when they were in the eighth grade, that they're not going to get into truancy issues or tardy issues or get into behavior patterns that were unacceptable to the eighth grade, and that we're all on the same page as to what's happening as they're making that transition.
The second part of that question,
Yes?
I don't think you answered that. What would you do with the principal that feels that punitive action, and for example, in the form of detention, is not necessary in the middle school level? How would you handle that?
I'd bring them into consensus. I'd bring them into the room. If I've got an outlier in terms of the administrative staff who isn't if we all agree to something. I mean, frankly, we haven't sat in the room and all agreed to something. If we all agree to something, it's going to be my expectation is that if the 9 middle school principals in the high school agree to something, my expectation is they're all going to abide by it. If we haven't come to the common agreement, what am I going to do about it? I can't, because I haven't set the expectation. So that's the first step, is to make sure that there's a constant expectation and agreement among all people.
Thank you.
Committeewoman Doherty.
Thank you. According to the most recent EQA report, data has been used at the K-8 level to plan and evaluate instruction. However, the same report found that, quote, there was less evidence of data-driven and evaluated instruction at the high school level, especially in grades 10 through 12, end quote. How do you explain this disconnect at the high school, and what are you doing currently to correct it? As a superintendent accountable for the entire district, how would you address inconsistency in the implementation of district priorities?
I think it's a critical issue. I think that the inconsistency across K-12 is critical. And the last question sort of sparked that too. Every time we go around, every time we talk about separate email servers, we're talking about a system which seems to be structured as a K-8 system and a high school. So I think that what we really need to do is take a look at our staffing and personnel so that when we're doing leadership training, we're not doing K-8 in high school.
Excuse me if I could interrupt. I know we're short on time, but
okay.
I'm specifically referring to
Yes.
the data at the high school, because that is your current responsibility.
Yes.
In your cover letter, you claim that you had a central role in district's capacity for the collection and use of relevant data. I believe you have been successful, according to the EQA report, K-8, but we have not been successful, specifically 10 to 12. So I'd like you to address that piece.
Yeah, I think that what I take responsibility, because I work within this culture. And I think it is easy, I will admit, it has been easier for me as a person to work on the K-8 side than it's been on the 9 to 12 side. Because the system is set up that you have a separate structure. You have separate curriculum people. You have a separate English chair. You have a separate math chair. I go next door to talk to the English and math chair for the district, who's primarily doing a lot of K-8 work, that's not talking very much to the 9 to 12 folks. I mean, the fact is what we've got to do is find a way to get the English chair of the high school into central office and talking to the K-8 people, to find the ways to get the math folks at the high school into central office, or the central office people and the middle school people to the high school to make these connections. Frankly, we are not making those connections. We're not. The EQA is absolutely right about that. I'm as guilty as anybody else in the system because I'm working within the culture. I think there's a cultural thing within the system that goes right down to those email servers that I alluded to in the beginning, and we're going to have to do something systemically to change the alignment of the way people have responsibilities in the system, the way we do business, the way we talk to each other, the way we align leadership positions. so that there's far more conversation between K to 8 and 9 to 12 in the system. That's all I can say. We've made progress. We have made significant progress. And the fact is that we've got a lot of data that's going into the high school now that's coming from K to 8 that they have ready access to. And they're becoming better consumers of it. But still, obviously, there's there's growth that needs to happen.
Committeewoman Regina Fatacanti.
Thank you, Mr. Schlickman. Tell me what your philosophy is regarding school safety. What types of protocols should Lowell be implementing that we currently have not done so? Also, tell me what your philosophy would be in regards to a staff member who does not comply with the district's safety policies.
I have not really done an analysis of the safety systems within the school. I know that I have to get buzzed in to get into the K to 8 buildings. There are a bunch of open doors sometimes around the high school. I think that the doors of any high school are a critical issue as to who's getting in and out of the building. I want to go back and restate the fact that as I walk through Lowell High, having been through many schools, I think it is predominantly a safe building. To the answer to the question of what is the next step, I will tell you very honestly, I don't know what it is because I have not benchmarked where we are in terms of what is really, really happening. I've looked at school safety data, I've looked at perceptions. I'm now putting together the results of this year's survey of school safety, the way kids feel about safety within the system. They feel positive. The results are exceeding the national averages for urban high schools by significant measures, so that we're doing fairly well. I don't know. I admit, I don't know what the next step is. But I do appreciate having that question, and if it is the committee's will that we explore that question, or the community's feeling that we need to address that question, or the feeling of the staff or the students within the building that there are things that we need to address, that what we need to do is, instead of taking a look at what program we're going to put in, is we're going to go and take a look at what the needs are. And then once we know what the perceived needs are, is to then go back and develop a strategy for addressing those needs.
The second half of that question is a policy question,
Yeah.
which I know you can answer. What would you do if a staff member was not observing the current school department policy regarding safety?
It's hard to say, but without knowing the specific details, but I think that what we need to do is we need to address the issue, starting with the principal, addressing it with the teacher, of explaining what the policy is, and using a progressive discipline system where we're going and making a verbal note of what the issue is, and then if the performance doesn't improve, is a written note, and then a reprimand, and then take further action if the teacher is consistently refusing to abide by any one of our policies. Because I think that one of the expectations that the school committee has to have is that if we have a policy in the book, that you've voted it, you've put it in the policy manual, we put it online so people can find it, and I believe in that people should be able to see that policy manual, see that book, and be able to respond appropriately and be instructed when their conduct is not in alignment with what the expectations are of the school committee or the district.
Thank you, Mr. Schlickman. I'm going to give you an opportunity at this time, with the permission of the committee, to put together a 5-minute summary statement. And we look forward to your remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Lowell School Committee, Mr. Mayor, this is a wonderful city. I grew up in Northport, Long Island. I grew up 3 blocks from Jack Kerouac's house. He talked about Northport as being a community that reminded him of Lowell, and maybe there's sort of a poetry here. Maybe there's a reverse poetry of some sort, because I've come to Lowell and I've felt very comfortable in Lowell. I felt very privileged to work in Lowell. I came into Lowell and Ted Rurak showed me around and taught me how things work, introduced me to the people in the buildings, and I used that feeling of community that he just impressed upon me as being one of the essential things that have made this a really outstanding school system and a community to work with. And I've just been privileged every day to be here and to be a part of the community. I will state again that the question was raised in the newspaper. Is there a leader in this group? I hope in this interview that you can say yes. Not only that, I hope that as you have informal conversations with people in the district who know my work, particularly with principals, particularly with school clerks, because I've spent a lot of time working with school clerks and listening to school clerks, because their ability to do their job makes things happen for us. And listening to them and taking the time to wait for the second response, the "oh, by the way" comment, and listening carefully to those words. I know the system. I think I have the trust of the people in the system so that I can start work on day one. I have a vision of where the schools are and where they need to be. I think we need to rebuild community connections. I think we need to look at this as a city where you have a pre-K to PhD unified system, so there are no barriers between elementary, middle, high to the community college or the university, where we're working together because there is value of being in this community, and that the people of this community feel blessed by this school system, appreciate the good work that's going on, and feel confident that when they send their child to our schools, they will get the very best education they can. And I'm here to tell you, I know the system, I know the data, I know the people who are teaching here, I know the people who are leading here. I see some really great people, I see really great things, I see really great potential, I see a system that can be the best in the state. I see us as competing with Lexington. We will compete with Lexington. We will make the case to people who are buying homes. They are going to get a better education and more value and more opportunity and a better quality of life in Lowell than they would in any of the surrounding communities. And that's what makes a superintendent different than a principal. That's what makes a superintendent of a city system different than the superintendent of a small town system. That's what makes the difference in this role. And I see my vision of combining my experience of mastering the internal mechanisms of the Lowell Public Schools and being an advocate for public education, and in many ways a nationally respected person in terms of teacher quality, in terms of recruitment retention, in terms of data-driven decision-making. That I have the credentials and the vision and the ability and the leadership outside this community that you may not have seen because I've been an internal person, to really move this district, and this district will continue to move. And I know the newspaper also asked the question that only one person in this search has been a superintendent, and that's of a very small district. Are the candidates here ready to lead? Well, I see positives in everybody's resume and presentation. But I also know that you went to vote about a month ago. And if you voted, you probably voted for Barack Obama, for Hillary Clinton, or for John McCain. All three are senators. All three are policy people. All three have never even chaired a school committee. I've chaired a school committee, I've hired a superintendent, I've run a state organization, I've restructured it, I imposed an advocacy committee, I've moved it forward, I've brought in leaders. The new board of directors of MASC it represents people that I brought into that organization. I moved them forward. I will move this district forward. And 3 years from now, when we're here in this room, looking at where this district is, comparing it to where we have been, we will all be able to acknowledge our growth, our movement forward, and we will all be sitting here with the data required to say, okay, that was good. What are we going to do next to make it even better? And that's my mantra. That is good. Now, what are we going to do next time to make it better? And every day I wake up, every day I come to work, every day I'm in Lowell, that will be in my heart, in my soul, as I look at the children in this district. I would appreciate the honor of your support and the ability to lead this district that has made such great progress to now. I can bring it to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlickman. With the committee.
5-minute recess?
Can we have a 5-minute recess at this point? Yes.
I'm definitely here.
Thank you. Committee Member Leahy. Excuse me, I couldn't hear you. Committee Member Leahy? Here. Thank you. Thank you. Committee Member Leary? Here. Committee Member Martin?
Here.
All present.
Our next candidate for Superintendent of Schools in Lowell is Dr. Wendy Jack, who is currently the Director of Curriculum and Instruction at Lowell High School.
No, it's Wendy Jacks.
Dr. Jack, we welcome you here tonight, and I want to let you know that you can begin your 5-minute introductory statement. You will also have a 5-minute concluding statement. Each school committee member will ask you a question in turn. I want to remind you of the hour-and-a-half time limit for the entire interview. So we look forward to your opening statement. Thank you.
Back. Thanks. I'll say it again. Thank you very much for having me back. I'd like to say good evening and thank you to the mayor as well as the school committee for welcoming me back for another interview. Since the last interview, I've been thinking a little bit about how to make an opening statement, and what I was thinking about is the state of our schools. And the question that I think the next superintendent has to be able to answer, and that is what will it take to get our school district to the next level? We have some great programs going on. We have some wonderful teachers, wonderful parents, yet so many of our schools are underperforming or are in need of corrective action, and I think the next superintendent has to be able to answer that question and be able to move the district to the next level. So my answer to that question would be to walk into the position with a plan. And I'd like to just talk about it for a minute, and I think through the questions that you'll ask me this evening, I'll be able to articulate the whole plan, but my plan is around literacy. We have many programs in place now. Some of them are phenomenal, some of them need some revision, but I believe that in order for our students to succeed, the key to that success is putting systems in place around literacy for students at all levels. All of the students now, from grade 10 backwards to kindergarten and from now on, will have to pass 4 MCAS exams: English, math, social studies, and science. If they're not literate and they are not close to grade level by the time they get to grade 10, they're not going to pass any of them. We've watched this data for many years, and we've seen some improvement, but we still have some serious concerns around literacy. At Lowell High, we can tell you, we can track the data and show you that students in grade 10 can do very respectably on the writing composition or the long comp in the MCAS and then fail the test. That's because we've done a good job around writing across the district, but the literacy is still a concern. You can't pass the MCAS if you can't read. And so part of what I think my plan would be to put systems in place, to look at the literacy programs around the district, to work very cooperatively with the other experts who are the teachers and the administrators in the buildings, and put a system in place. I was thinking today, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could come to the school committee a few years from now and say, we don't need the Read 180 program at Lowell High anymore. That would be a great goal, and it's not necessarily a realistic goal at this time, but I think it's one that we should work toward as a system. It's working with students around literacy. So just quickly, then I thought about my own skills and whether or not I have them to bring the district through this, and I think I do. And some of the skills I think necessary are practical experience, not simply reading about theory, about reading, practical experience, working with students around this, having knowledge of the programs that are successful, and being able to work through it. Also being current in educational research. Again, not reading about it, having some practical knowledge and practical experience with this, having a little bit of special education background, having a little bit of ELL background. I think those are all components that the new superintendent has to have, and finally, being able to hit the ground running on day one, not 6 months after the person takes over. I think it's important to go from day one. That would be my plan, and that would be my opening statement. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Jack. I'd like to begin the questions with Chairperson Jim Leary.
Hi, Wendy. How are you doing tonight?
Good, thanks.
Good. Welcome, and congratulations on making the finalists.
Thank you.
I got a question for you regarding, you're currently the Director of Curriculum at the high school.
Right.
And as you know, that the upcoming next year, the science MCAS will be implemented, I think, 2009. And as being a former member of the Lowell High School Subcommittee, we know that our science labs are not exactly where we want them to be. What would your plan be on July 1st if you're selected as superintendent to update our science labs and ensure that our freshmen and 8th graders, K through 8, are prepared when they're coming into the high school to pass the MCAS? So it's a two-part question, one regarding science labs, and then the curriculum K through 8 for science.
Right. Great question. The first part of the question with regard, I think some of the way to answer you has to be around the physical concerns around the labs. And I think that question, we have to come to you with some numbers, some very specific information well before that. In fact, we'll be coming to you in the spring with some numbers and some plans in place that we would hope that you would support in around the putting the finishing touches on the physical labs in order to be able to have students spend more time in the labs, because one of the concerns, as we know, is that as we schedule the building and so forth, the students don't spend enough time in the science labs right now. Some of that is because of the physical concerns and the needs for upgrades, which we've discussed, and we appreciate your support in helping with that. And some of it is around scheduling and getting students in. So to address that, and I think I'm answering your question, to address that is some of the work that we've done around piloting programs around lab simulations, purchasing software, so that students can still have a lab experience in the classroom, in addition to working in the physical lab. With regard to the MCAS, the other part of your question, we are in the second year of a multi-year change within the science department to address the science MCAS. Last year, the year before actually, we started to talk about this. We created a program. The test of choice will be biology for the science MCAS. Now, students have the option to take another test. In fact, we've taken the position in the high school, we did it last year, that every 9th grader will take the Intro to Physics MCAS in the 9th grade. The ones that pass have met their graduation requirement. And we had a very good percentage of students that did pass that last year. Other students last year elected to take the chemistry. The students, for example, that were in the 10th grade honors chemistry took the honors chemistry MCAS. They've met their graduation requirement. For students moving ahead, though, for the majority of the students, many of whom will struggle, the biology will be the test of choice for a lot of reasons. One, it involves less math to pass it. Number two, quite honestly, it's more fun. And students like biology more than they like chemistry or physics, very, very honestly. So to address that, I'll be very quick. I know I'm going to run out of time. Biology, and then we've created a course called Life Science in the 9th grade. And the students that take Life Science are the students that are in Read 180. The students in Life Science are the struggling 9th graders. So they're getting the reading support, and what they'll have at the end of their sophomore year is 2 years of biology. The Life Sciences, like biology, and then biology, and so that's our plan for supporting students to get as many of them through that science as possible.
Just a quick follow-up, too, regarding the science lab issues. What exactly have you undertaken this year to begin the updates for the science labs prior to coming up for the following year?
Right. We presented we have a report ready which shows the upgrades, locks, security, some of the hoods and the gas, and some of the electrical work. The electrical work is going to be one of the major concerns that is going to take a little bit more time. But if you recall, some of the information on that report that we've presented a couple of months ago, I think it was, some of it was around security and small upgrades and small amounts of materials that we've been able to purchase. So we have done quite a bit of work on, shall we say, the low-cost items. The greater costs, electricity and so forth, people are beginning to working cooperatively, our custodians with the men from the city, because it's a combination of both groups that have to do that work. So it's ongoing. Yeah.
Committee Person Martin.
If I could, I'd like to ask a follow-up question to Mr. Leary, and just to kind of tease out one thing you had mentioned. So in this past year, our 9th graders took the MCAS in physics. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I know you had said that we had a fairly good passing rate. Do you know offhand what that was?
I think it was around 62%. It was pretty good. I would have to go back and double check, but I think it was around in the low 60s. And then the chemistry was the highest passing rate, and which makes sense because the students taking the chemistry were mostly the honors level chemistry students, so that was very high. But we were not disappointed in the first number with the intro.
So it wasn't every 9th grader taking physics, it was just a select group taking it?
Every 9th grader took MCAS this year. That we took the position that every student, the life science was new this year, so last year everybody was taking intro to physics. So last year every 9th grader took the intro to physics, and those were the scores that came this spring.
Okay, I'll move on to
Is that okay?
Yep, nope,
Yeah.
that's fine.
All right.
We've got some geniuses at the high school. That's excellent. I
we
doubt
were-
I could pass
we were
the
happy.
physics MCAS.
Yeah, we were happy. We'll see how we do with the social studies.
My question really does focus on educational philosophy, and what I'm particularly interested in, and I'm heartened when I hear you talk about your background and your commitment to remaining current on educational theory and current research. What I'd like to hear is about your overarching educational approach, and how current research, how the kind of prevailing educational theories, and maybe even more importantly, some burgeoning educational theories, really inform your changing and shifting educational approach.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of the way that I would answer you would be that we know so much about how students learn now as compared with previous years that, in my opinion, with the right support and the right opportunities for teachers to acquire professional knowledge, there are no excuses for us not being able to move students ahead. We know that students learn many different ways. We know most students are visual learners, yet we still know that the majority of instruction in the schools is auditory. We need to work on that. We're making progress, but we're not there. We know that students are able to present what they know in many different ways, yet we still often assess students too traditionally. That's got to change. Those are some of the things we've been working on, is helping teachers to develop assessments that are alternative to traditional assessments, because a student might be very knowledgeable on a subject and not be able to present the information back to you in a traditional way. That's part of the educational research and and I really do believe in that. We also know that a lot of the professional development that has been presented to students presented to teachers in recent years to support English language learners or special education students, as an example, we know that works for everybody. We know that works for every fragile learner. So I guess in terms of, I'm not sure I'm talking about my philosophy as much as I am talking about what I know about current educational research and how it can support students of all ability levels and all grade levels.
Mayor Caulfield.
Dr. Jack, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Be at ease, be comfortable, relax.
Do I look nervous?
No,
Okay.
but we don't want you to be nervous.
I am now.
No. I just have one small question for you, and then I'm going to get into some other questions as well. You were interim superintendent of schools in Manchester, New Hampshire
Yes.
in '97. How many students attended? Manchester's a huge city. How many students attended that school district?
It's very similar to Lowell. There are approximately 120,000 in the city, so in the district, there are three public high schools of 6,000, so probably 15 to 18,000 students.
Okay.
Very similar to here.
My question,
Yes.
you were on a threshold of
Yes.
being the superintendent of Manchester Public Schools.
Yep.
You left Manchester, and you were hired in Lowell High School as a chair of the English department. Why did that happen?
It's a great question, and it involves my family. At the time, my husband and I were both assistant superintendents, and we had a son that was in the 8th grade, 7th grade, one son, and it was not working well. It was at a time during his life when it was not right for him to have two parents out 3 or 4 nights a week. So I made a decision that the opportunity actually came at Lowell High School. I saw the position advertised in the paper. I was still employed, and I saw the position, and I came down and I interviewed for it, and I was accepted, and I resigned from this district that I was working in. It was actually Hudson, New Hampshire, and I resigned on December 12th, which was a Friday, and I started at Lowell High School Monday, December 15th. And it was a wonderful, it really worked well for us. It was around my family. And a couple of years later, when my son was in the 10th grade, I took him out of the public schools in New Hampshire and brought him here.
Yep.
And he graduated from Lowell High.
Thank you for answering that question for me. Your resume is absolutely excellent.
Thank you.
You have a fabulous education, and I noticed that you have a Master of Education in Learning Disabilities.
Right.
And as I asked the previous candidate, we have many talented students in our system. students who get on the honor roll, attend the Latin Lyceum, go on to college, to a higher school of learning, yet we do have those students who could probably also benefit from a higher school of learning, but sometimes they're lost in the cracks. They might have a learning disability, and in some cases, they're afraid to put up their hand to ask a question. How would you address those students? So every student, and I loved your opening remarks. You must have a plan. How would you address those students to make sure every student gets a shot at that brass ring?
I'm an advocate of inclusion in the classrooms. And years ago, that was a struggle we began to have when we had to change the thinking of mainstream teachers around learning disabilities and special education. It took us a long time to change that way of thinking, and we're not perfect yet, but we've made a lot of progress in terms of helping all teachers to become teachers of learning disabled or special education students. And so some of my answer to your question is with regard to ongoing opportunities for regular ed teachers to gain professional knowledge to support students with learning disabilities. And a lot of that has occurred in recent years, where we've helped teachers to develop strategies to work with students, all students in the classroom. Because one of the things that, again, that's taken us a long time to get here is to get people to agree that students with special education needs should be in the regular ed classrooms, that they shouldn't be off on their own. And students with learning disabilities will learn from good role models. So that's one of the things that we do, but a lot of it comes from supporting teachers around professional knowledge so that they can help them. When I was answering one of the earlier questions, I think it probably bears repeating. A lot of the professional development that has been geared toward a particular group of students, special ed, ELL, we found that helps every fragile student. And there are a lot of kids in classes that are not identified as special education, but they still need that support, and they'll gain that support. And I hope my background will help that. I have not been a teacher of special education, but I think I've had enough practical experience in regular education and also in administration to be able to support teachers in that regard.
Thank you.
Dr. Jack, can I ask you to push your microphone away just a tiny bit? There's a little bit of a background noise to it, so thank you. That's okay. Chairperson or committee person Conway, please.
Good evening, Dr. Jack. Congratulations on making it to the finals. The question I have, first question tonight is, do you believe in and would you support promoting from within? And please explain the factors that influence your position on this question.
Well, I hope you hire from within. Yes.
It's a consistent answer.
Yes, I do.
At least for the first two.
Yeah, that's a great question, really, and I do sincerely. I support that. If you have two candidates for any position, if it's a teaching position, if it's an administrative position, when you've got a couple of people that have equal backgrounds, and I'll talk about a couple of the qualities in a second, when all things are equal, the nod, I believe, goes to the internal candidate. If one of the most important reasons, I think, is that your internal candidate, again, hits the ground running. There's no learning curve. For that person, it's another day in another building, in another office. But seriously, to answer your question, in particular with regard to Lowell, it's imperative that a candidate that's going to be successful in Lowell has some urban experience, has some knowledge of our students, has some knowledge of our cultures. We have students from not only so many different cultures, but dozens of different languages and dialects, and it's very important for people to know that. I think it's also important for people to come in and have some special education background and have some knowledge of the English language learners that we have in our building. I think that one of the most important parts of hiring people in our district and hiring from within is we're watching poverty. I would say that one of the most serious considerations that we have in front of us, and we're watching it grow, is the issues of poverty. And a teacher coming into this district to work has to have some knowledge of that. There's so much research out there of how children in poverty behave based on poverty. They think differently, they behave differently, their needs are different. And a person coming in from another district is not going to have that knowledge base that someone from Lowell has. I think what I've learned, having been here now going on 11 years, even though I don't live in Lowell, I've grown to really be committed to this district. And I have learned that the people in Lowell and the people that work in Lowell really are sincerely committed to their schools. And I have met very few people working in this city that are not committed to the city. So I do really support that, and I think probably the most important point would be that you come in with no learning curve. You know the city and you're ready to roll, and I think that's probably the most important part.
Thank you, Dr. Jack.
Committeewoman Doherty.
Thank you. Dr. Jack, as the person responsible for the quality of instruction at the high school, how do you respond to the recent EQA findings that, quote, instruction was strongest at the middle level, followed by the elementary level. Mm-hmm. Instruction at the high school was weakest on all measures assessed by the EQA team, end quote. What are you doing currently to resolve this issue? And more importantly, as superintendent accountable for the entire district, how would you ensure consistent, high-quality instruction at all levels?
I knew you were going to ask me about that report. Yes, I've read that. And I'm very disappointed in it, and I cannot say beyond a shadow of doubt that it's not accurate. I can say just one point, and then I'm going to answer your questions carefully. It is a snapshot of the high school. A small number of classes were observed during that day. By a small number of people, but it is the snapshot, and that's the perception that the examiners went away with, so it has to be addressed. There are some excellent instructors at the high school. There are some very traditional instructors at the high school. And some of, when we talk about quality instruction today, we're talking about non-traditional student-centered, student-engaged classroom. That's what we're looking for, and there is still a struggle among particularly secondary teachers, high school teachers, to let go of that and to develop student-centered classrooms with cooperative learning and so forth, and that's a struggle for people, and I know that that's the case, but how do you remedy it? Several ways. Talking about professional development for a minute again, teachers, I think, gain the most in terms of changing their instruction when they observe their peers. I think some of the strongest, some of the best experts that we have are right here in the classroom. And one of the things that we try to do, and I know they do this across the district, is when teachers are struggling in the classroom, one of the things that they do, and it doesn't cost anything, is to have students observe master teachers. Beyond that, though, is the follow-up with the evaluator, with the department head, or the instructional specialist, or the support pieces that have to be put in place so that the teacher doesn't go in and watch and say, that's great, and go back to the old ways. There has to be follow-through, and the teacher has to change. Importantly, too, is the teacher has to buy into it, and the only way that's going to happen is if the teacher sees results. And you see that by watching, observing it in another classroom, bringing it back to your classroom and seeing some results. So I do agree. So that's one strategy. Something else that we've talked about, and it involves time, and I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about time if I do have time this evening, because it's a precious commodity, particularly on the high school level, is to find time when teachers can really talk to one another and share strategies that have worked and be able to try them and go back and try them. To give you an example, one of the things that we've done as a group, you've heard me talk about the many vertical teams that we have in place in the district. One of them that I'm very proud of is the math vertical team. And we have, as a result of our meetings over the past several years, we've had a lot of discussion about strengths and weaknesses and strategies that work. I think I can say that some of the instructional strategies have changed as a result of that particular group being able to meet together. So in a nutshell, to answer your question, we have to put mechanisms in place for teachers to see good instruction and understand why theirs needs to change. We need to help teachers around different types of assessments, and help teachers on the secondary level let go of that fear that you don't have to control every second of every high school student's life in the classroom. It's okay to have a little noise, as long as it's good noise and students are working on what you ask them to do. It's a serious issue in the high schools. It's across the country. People trying to work with that.
Dr. Jack. Oh, I'm sorry. Should I wait for you to call me?
Committeewoman Fataconte.
Thank you. Dr. Jack, since Lowell has a population of 42 to 45% of limited English proficient students, what is your philosophy to ensure that each of those students is successful, becomes not only a high school graduate, but a lifelong learner with the knowledge that a college degree is within their reach?
I think one of the things that I'd like to answer that first as to what a superintendent has to do with that in that regard first. And I think the first thing is that the superintendent has got to have some practical knowledge in that area to begin with. Has got to have a little bit of background. For example, you've got to know the students. And I think it's important, for example, I speak with ELL students and parents every day. Every day there are ELL students and parents in the main office, and we talk to them. So first it's knowing the students, it's knowing the needs, it's knowing the cultures. We've learned that people from different cultures, and I've learned this as recently as last week, have different expectations for their children. Some parents handle discipline differently. Some people have a different philosophy on working, the importance of work versus going to school. So I think we have to start with that, and then we move on to professional knowledge. And there again, as when we talk about a teacher everybody's got to be a teacher of reading, everybody's got to be an ELL teacher. And I'm afraid that we are not quite there yet. We're getting close, but we're not quite there yet. If we ask teachers in the district, what do you teach? Or if you had 100 teachers in front of you and you asked the question, how many of you are ELL teachers? Maybe 20 of them or 30 of them would raise their hands, and we have not arrived until everybody raises his hand, because everybody has to be a teacher of English language learners. To further answer your question, we have learned that many of the professional opportunities that teachers have been involved in have brought students leaps and bounds. Many of our students have seen great success, but not all, and it comes back to the discussion of literacy. it comes back to supporting ELL students around literacy. We've learned recently there are many, many students in our school that are English language learners. They've come to this country without a lot of formal education in their own language. So their difficulty is much more significant because if you have a child that's coming in from Sierra Leone, or that's probably not a good example because many of those students speak English, but let's say a student's coming in from Brazil and his native language is Portuguese, and he's only had 4 or 5 years of formal education, but he's 16 years old, so he's coming into the 9th or the 10th grade. And we expect him to be on grade level in English, and it's not going to happen. So the support systems have to be in place for that student to bring him along in both areas. I had a conversation with a teacher a couple weeks ago, and I think I referenced this in the last interview as to what are some of the strategies to support students like that? And it's about visual clues and supporting students, showing them visually what a word means, showing them words mean many different things in English, and bringing students along slowly so that they can't be expected to come into grade 10 and be successful if they've only had 4 or 5 years of formal education in their own language. So there again, it's a slow and steady process. It's around professional learning, and it's having, I think, a good solid knowledge base of the student that's in front of you, doing some initial assessment, and then helping the student go away. Go ahead. Just one other example, to use the Read 180 program as an example. We were very happy to have that, as you know, but one of the things that we've learned is that we can't support all English language learners in that program because their English language is so limited that they can't score on the test for us to place them. And it's actually been good for us because we've gotten to know several students this year by using the Read 180 and showing them that they couldn't place, so it allowed us to put a better program in place for them. So it's a solid knowledge base. I think it's the professional development, and it's the whole school rallying around the English language learner population to support them.
Committee Person Leahy.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. As school committee people, we have to always anticipate our next moves for the future. So with that in mind, one of your first major tasks amongst coming up with a budget for the district would be in the next year or so, we'll be looking for a new leader of the high school. So my question would be, how would you go about this? What would you be looking for in that person? And what would be maybe 3 of the most important improvements that are needed to be made at the high school, but keeping in mind the budget constraints?
I wonder if the headmaster's listening to this. Thanks, Sean. If it's okay, I'm going to start with improvement and then work backward, and I might have to ask you to just repeat the first part of it again. But the improvements at the high school, I mean, that's a great question, because we are getting ready for our 5-year. It's been just over 4 years since we were accredited. And at the 5-year mark, and as you know, I'm responsible to write the reports, and I try to remember to present them to you each time I write them. But as we get ready for 5 years, the expectation will be that we have been able to implement every one of those 84 recommendations on that as a result of that self-study. So some of the most important ones, so I'm going to reference those because I think that that's going to be very important. They talk a lot about technology in that report, and that is not new for us because we talk a lot about that too. The technology at the high school, we have thousands of computers, but many of them are getting old they don't all support the software programs and so forth, so that's going to be a major area. I'm going to be coming to you in the spring with some requests around technology to support the science programs. So that's going to be a small component of what you're talking about. But the technology is going to be a major concern for us. We want our students to use technology, and they do, but we are definitely falling behind in terms of the amount of technology we have and the ability to keep it current with regard to the software that it'll support and so forth. So that would be one example. Our science labs is another one. That is also referenced in the New England Association of Secondary Schools and Colleges report. The expectation will be that those will be all in working order. I think we've made a lot of progress on that. I think that's probably going to be one that we will make significant progress on. So that would be a second concern. Class size was referenced in the report. I think we're in pretty good shape with that, because the numbers at the high school have dropped a little bit over the past couple of years, and we've been able, with the support of the committee, to not reduce teachers. And I think that that's going to be very important consideration as we go forward, to take every precaution not to reduce class size. So that would be a third area of concern. They talk about staffing. One of the concerns that's in that report is around our library media center. They reference the physical space, and they reference the number of professional staff that we have in there, and they're very critical of that. That a school of nearly 4,000 students, that we have a library that's the size that it is, and there are only 2 full-time media specialists. So those are 4 areas I think that we need to at least talk about addressing in some regard. Could you just say your first part to me again, John? I'm sorry.
Sure. Just, in the future, we're going to anticipate looking for a new leader for the high school, and when Mr. Samaras, I'm trying to push him out, but we have to anticipate that. So what would you be looking for how would you go about this, and what would you be looking for in someone to take over the high school?
Well, I think, again, the person that takes over the high school has to be a good educational leader, an instructional leader. Can't be a manager, it's got to be an instructional leader. It's got to be a person that has, similar to what I've described, I think, earlier, it has to be a person that's current in educational practices and so forth, so that the person can walk in and out of classrooms and observe good teaching and observe bad teaching and get involved in it and support improvement. It's got to be a strong leader in terms of a person that can manage a lot. As you know, the number of issues that go through the high school in any split second are inordinate amounts. And I think the person has to be able to be an excellent manager of time. We often, and this is going to sound funny, but there are days when we say we feel as if we're working at Demula's Deli. It's take a number. There's so many things that are happening one after another. A good headmaster has got to be able to manage that. Manage time, manage crisis, but still make informed decisions, having spoken to the appropriate people and so forth, and make good decisions. Above all, though, I think is the very strong instructional leader. That's what we need at the high school. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up, Wendy, regarding that. I mean, obviously, the high school has, not just the high school, but say K through 8 as well.
Yeah.
What John was, in regarding picking an individual, aside from the day-to-day management, what are you looking for the vision of someone who would lead the high school or lead, the Sullivan.
Yep. Well, there again, the headmaster has got to know the needs of the high school. And the needs of the high school are around many of the things that we've been talking about tonight. Supporting literacy, supporting English language learners, and so forth. And so that the vision has got to be able to support those students, all those students, and look for opportunities of how to support those students within the school and outside of the school. Being able to draw on the community and draw on the partnerships that are in place and get the support that's necessary for students. It involves working with people in the classroom. It involves with people work in the community. The headmaster has got to be able to reach into the community, be part of the community, and look for, take strength from the community. Because I think a lot of the business partners, the university, the college, they want to be involved with us. They have a lot to offer us, and I think the headmaster has got to be able to reach out to them with regard to his vision, which I hope will be to support the literacy of all of the students at that high school, to get them in the shape that they need to be to graduate, be successful, and to move on to college without remediation.
We're going to begin the second round of questioning now, and we'll begin with Connie Martin.
Thank you. Dr. Jack, I'd like to follow up on actually one of your answers during the preliminary screening interview, and it was in regards to the budget. I know that when, as we went through that first part of this process, you had mentioned the need over the course of a school year to be able to, and cognizant of watching retirements, watching healthcare costs, things like that, in order to keep a strong handle on the budget. But I think what I'd like to hear about this evening is about the budget development process. Obviously, creating that kind of a document is one of the most critical tasks that our superintendent is charged with. Could you describe for me the type of process you would envision putting in place for that, and how you would ensure that every dollar being spent was really being spent as wisely and effectively as possible?
Well, there again, just to repeat one thing I said earlier, I think the budget process begins the day the new budget goes in place. And I think as you work on that, you're constantly keeping an eye on fixed costs. You're watching healthcare. You're watching, there are certain things within the budget that you know how much it's going to be, or you can anticipate an increase and so forth. Healthcare, capital expenses, district needs and building needs. If there's a concern that arises early in the year, that there's a roofing concern at a school, or there are concerns that have to be addressed because of the New England schools and colleges, those are part of the building process, and I think those have to be referenced early on. I also think that we have to know as soon as possible, and the money that we're getting, the title money. What are we getting from Title I? We know fairly early in the budget process. We can anticipate if we're being reduced or if we're getting an increase in the federal money, the ed reform money. So those figures have to be. We have to know those early, and those have to be part of the discussion. I think we need to be talking with not only the building administrators, but also the teachers. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting yesterday, and we asked teachers to start to give us some thoughts. What were their thoughts on what are the critical needs at Lowell High School, and what should we be thinking about for next year? I think another area of concern is we've got to be looking at the technology needs. That's a major component, it should be, I think, a major component of our budget as we build it. We've got to work with the technology. So it's looking at the costs that we know we have, the costs that we need to spend. We need to look at always being able to reallocate, prioritize, and reprioritize in order to look at the opportunity to reduce spending. What we've done in the past couple of years, which I think is a pretty good process, is actually a tiered process. If we have a figure in mind, are we going to have a level funded budget, which means a decrease in what we know we have to decrease? If we're going to have a level funded budget, we're going to lose some services. We're going to lose something. If we have a level services budget, that's sort of a status quo. We're going to be able to sort of maintain where we are. Or are we able to have an increase of 2% or 3% as we anticipate that? That helps us, I think, prioritize what our needs will be. And I think we have to be in early and frequent communication with the school committee, with our building administrators and our teachers, so that when we come to the end of it, people consider it a fair and reasonable process.
I'm sorry, just one quick follow-up. What I'm hearing you describe is I think an inclusive process, like it's getting feedback, from every level to inform the decision-making.
Yep.
Do you feel that the best approach in developing a budget is to, you started with baseline, if it's, level funding or, gauging what increases there may be. Your familiarity or your feelings on zero-based budgeting, is that something that's effective? Is it something that you dismiss as not effective, or has it been considered?
Yeah, I wouldn't dismiss it. I think it has to be considered. I think it has to be part of the discussion. I think we have to get a handle on what we're looking like, and then I think we have to have discussions around that. Yeah, I think it's hard. I think we know that we're going to be in a very, very tight budget situation. I think that's a given, and that has to be that's the consideration. Yeah.
So, could I have a follow-up on that?
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jack. My follow-up to the budget question would be that since I've been here for the last 6 years, unfortunately, we've always had a tight budget.
Yeah.
And one statement that I've heard, more recently is that everybody says, well, the last thing we're going to cut is the classroom teacher. And I think we obviously all agree with that. But sometimes it's not reality. So could you kind of just give us an explanation on maybe how your approach would be when it comes down to cutting, the numbers of, teachers or para? So,
Sure.
What would your thinking be on that?
Yeah. Well, the first way we do it is look at retirements and resignations and not replace those positions if the numbers were down. So that would be the easiest way to handle it. If the numbers, I'm just using this as an example, if the numbers in the English department at Lowell High School were reduced and we had a couple of retirements, we would not replace them, as long as we weren't going to overload the classroom. So I think that would be the first one. I think then we have to look at the critical areas. We're bound by state law, for example, with regard to special education, with some of those classes. So we would not have an opportunity to reduce those classes, even if the numbers did drop a little, because there are laws that we must abide by. So the first run would be to look at reduction in numbers and being able to do that. Look at possibly, although I would not like to do this, but it would have to probably be a consideration ahead of some of the core classes. We'd have to start to look at some of the elective courses. But there again, thinking at the secondary level, the elective courses are so important to students on their transcripts. So I wouldn't want to do that either. I would hope that we could manage through retirements and resignations. Yeah.
Mayor Caulfield.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed your opening statements.
Thank you.
And you indicated the next level, underperforming, have a plan, and students at all levels. I appreciate that. We have many wonderful schools in our city. some are underperforming, and some are excelling in discipline and academics. And I really believe that if the student doesn't make it in the middle school, by the time they get to high school, they could be lost. I honestly believe the school committee should not micromanage the superintendent, but I also believe the school committee sets policy for that superintendent to more or less follow. Would you be willing to emulate the plans that some middle schools have and elementary schools have that are excelling in discipline and academics, and more or less make that a school-wide district format, that if the daily school is doing a wonderful job, then we must find out what Mr. Skinner's secret is. What is his plan? I was at that school today, and the teachers all had a smile on their face, and they all said the daily school is the best, and I wouldn't expect them to say anything else. But what I'm really getting at, Doctor, is if there's some schools that are failing, and there's some schools that are excelling, it's up to the school committee and the superintendent to find out the reason why, and how can we bring those schools that are failing back up to the level that the daily school and other schools are. Would you be willing to follow that format?
Yes, yes, I would. And I agree with that format. And just take a minute to describe some of the things that are going on around the district that are somewhat similar to what you're talking about, because I do agree with you. I've said so many times, and I sincerely mean this when I say it, that some of the greatest experts in this district are in the schools. And that's an example. And I've always been an advocate of working with the experts in the district as opposed to hiring $1,000 a day consultants to come in and show us how to do it. And I think we've emulated that at the high school. But with regard to your question, I think it's a great one. In the schools, we already use that model where we have teachers observe master teachers in order to improve their instruction. And I think that teachers in other schools would welcome the opportunity to go to other schools. I know they would. And I know that the middle school administrators would agree with that, because they're a very cohesive group of people. They work together well, and I know that they'd agree with that. And setting up a plan to do that. There's a plan in place just now. We're just beginning, and I'll just describe it very quickly to you, under the supervision of Deputy Superintendent Franco, where there are teams of people, not exactly the model you're describing, but teams of people from the district, from the schools, that are going to be visiting what we call the Commonwealth priority schools. That's the euphemism now that the Department of Education uses for the underperforming schools. And so there are teams of people being convened right now to start to go to those schools to observe and to make recommendations for them around the support to help them improve. So the model that you're describing is a little bit different. It's giving people the opportunity to go observe the daily school, or getting people from the daily school or others to be able to work with people from other schools and around strategies. And I think it's a great model. I can't imagine why anyone would find fault with it.
Okay.
Because there's nobody here that doesn't want to do his best.
And I know there's other middle schools
Yeah.
that are equal to the daily school, but I know the daily school because my grandson attends that school. And I do know discipline. I know my grandson, he said, Grampy, nobody goofs off in that school. And that's nice to hear. And you know, Doctor, if you don't have discipline under control, you don't have education under control. And that's the only way the students will learn, especially those students who want to learn. They cannot learn if discipline isn't in order. And I've many teachers, and discipline is an issue. And I would if you become the next superintendent, I would like that addressed and come up with a program.
Right.
If there's certain schools, elementary schools, that are performing above and beyond, then every elementary school should follow some of that format. And if the principal says, oh, well, I don't want to do that, you know what? This is the school system that you and the school committee are going to run. And we have to do it for the best interest of the children, not some individual. Thank you.
Yes.
I agree. Could I just like to just respond to you just very quickly? I agree with you in regards to discipline, and I think that teachers want disciplinary support. They want, because when they are supported around discipline, they feel as if there's mutual respect in the building, and that's what's going to make them happy.
Just must get support
That's, yes,
from the administrators of that school.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Caulfield. Committee Person Conway, please.
Thank you. Dr. Jack, that leads me into my question here. Would you please elaborate on your views regarding the role of discipline in our schools, including your overall philosophy of discipline and your views on district-wide policies in this area? In a related question, how would you work with a principal that feels that punitive actions in the form of detention are not necessary at the middle school level?
Still writing. Okay, I think I got it. I absolutely believe that if there's a sense of discipline, there'll be chaos. I believe that teachers, the first line of discipline, I think, is with the teachers, and I think they would all agree with that they are responsible for the lower level infractions, and they need to handle those, and I don't think there's a teacher that would disagree with that. However, when the disciplinary concerns go beyond the low level, the support has to be in place. It has to be consistent, and it's got to be there. If it's not there, chaos will eventually reign in the classroom. Recently, we've been doing some interviews and for positions for next year, and that's probably the first question that anybody asks us, because it's a concern about coming into an urban center around discipline. It's just an assumption that the discipline is a problem, and that's always the first concern. And so, and what they will tell us, I'm a teacher, I'm the first line, but if I can't handle it, I need the support, and if I don't get the support, then nothing else matters. If the student gets in trouble and he's sent to the assistant principal or he's sent to the housemaster and he's simply sent back to the classroom, it isn't going to work, because the student is going to feel that if there are no consequences, therefore the behavior will deteriorate. So the behavior has to be consistent, and it has to be progressive. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think it's progressive. I think that assistant principals, housemasters keep records for students, and so a student is seen once. The goal of discipline is remediation. So if you see the student once and the problem is remediated, everybody's happy. If the problem repeats itself, then discipline is severe and the student has to be held to task. If that is not occurring, then a teacher has a chance in the classroom. Related to that, though, discipline, and I think I mentioned this before, related to the discipline, which needs to be consistent, is also the diagnosis, because 99% of the time, the student that is misbehaving has got a learning concern. So the discipline has to be managed, but at the same time, we have to find out what's going on with the student. And if both of those things happen, then we've got a fighting chance in helping that student. I just really quickly, and I'll get to the other parts of your question, Mr. Conway. I'm involved, as I mentioned before, in a program called National Institute of School. One of the first things they said to us is, if you're an assistant principal, or a principal, and a student comes before you because he's in trouble and he's misbehaved, don't say, "What did you do?" Say, "What were you studying in the classroom when you got in trouble?" The discipline will be the same, but you're going to find out what's going on with that student in terms of his learning. And so two things will get accomplished as you're handling the discipline. The other part of your question was on whether or not there should be a district-wide policy. I guess I would say to that, district-wide policy by level, because the infractions can be different at the high school than they're going to be at the elementary school. So I guess what I would like to see is a policy, an elementary school policy, a middle school policy, and a high school policy. When I was assistant superintendent in Manchester, the three major high schools had a consistent, we called it a code of conduct. And disciplinary infractions were leveled. Level 1 being the lowest and level 4 being the highest, and all three high schools followed that policy. So it was pretty simple. And when the principals met and when the assistant principals met, it's easier. If there's a consistent policy, people might not like it, but it's easier in the long run because it's the same in every building. Detention, could you repeat that one?
Yes, the last part there. How would you work with a principal that feels that punitive actions in the form of detention are not necessary in the middle school level?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I would not work alone with that person. I think that person there again, and I have no problem telling people what to do, but I don't think that accomplishes it. I think going back to the model that we've described before is if we watch, looking at exemplary middle schools, we look at some models. There's a detention program in place. It's working. We can track the data. We can show that discipline has diminished over time because of the detention policy, because of the discipline policy. That principal hopefully is going to take a look at that data and see that his own school is going to improve if he puts some disciplinary measures in place, such as detention. Because the goal is, I would guess, that that person that has no detention, I have no idea who it is, but I would guess that that person probably got some pretty serious discipline in his school or her school, because there are no punitive measures. There have to be. There have to be punitive measures, and detention is the simplest. With middle schools and with elementary schools, I recognize that we have to give people lead time, and you can't say to a sixth grader, you got to stay today, but maybe you're staying tomorrow the next day, but you're going to stay. So make arrangements with your parents. Okay.
Thank you.
Committee Person Doherty.
This is a three-part question.
Oh, boy. These are hard.
They're all connected. What is your vision and concrete plan to improve student learning at all levels? How would you get teachers on board as invested, active partners in implementing your plan? And what evidence can you offer from your past that demonstrates your ability to envision and implement a plan that leads to student learning?
Okay. If it's okay, I'm going to use the literacy example again, because we've had a lot of success with that. It's not the only one, but it's probably the simplest one to describe. I think my vision for improving student learning is that it's got to come under the umbrella of reading. Because if students are having difficulty reading, they're not going to pass anything. So it's, again, putting systems in place to support reading instruction at every level across the district. That would be the vision. And there are components of that. It's not as simple as it sounds. Taking into consideration support for English language learners, special education students with very different backgrounds and so forth. So there are components of that, but it's still part of literacy. And,
excuse me, don't you think we're doing that already?
I think
the Read 180 at the high school, with the reading interventions
Yeah.
at the elementary and middle school. I mean, I'm really looking for your vision for where you're going to take us
Yeah, well, let me say that at the middle schools, an example is the Power Up program. It's used differently at some of the schools. It's in every school, you're absolutely right, and it's used in every school, but it's not used the same way in every school. For example, at some schools, maybe 50% of the students get it. At another school, 100% of the students get it. So there again, it's diagnostic and it's consistency across every school, using that one as an example. And there are reading programs in every elementary school, but not necessarily the same program in the same manner in every single school. And so what I'm saying, here's what I'm saying, is that, and I have a little bit of a learning curve with the elementary schools, but we're looking at we're looking at the programs that are in place now, what's working the best, sharing thoughts, and which one or two do we want to have across the district, in the elementary school, and then in the middle school, and then in the high school. With regard to the Read 180, again, at the high school, using that, part of your question was evidence that, that we've seen success with this. It's a data-friendly program, and I think that's a very important component of any reading program, so that teachers are able to track their data and really look at student success and be able to pick the data apart and find specific gaps in students' learning.
Just a quick reminder to our candidate and to the school committee members, we have 20 minutes until the time concludes. So I remind the candidate of the time involved in answering the questions. Thank you. Committee person Faticante.
Thank you. We recognize that a concern of parents all over our district is whether or not their child is safe when they go to school. I don't know if parents are so much worried about what happens after that as much as they are concerned with safety in our public schools. What's your philosophy regarding the safety protocols that we have in the Lowell Public Schools? Should we be implementing a particular protocol that we have not yet done so? And also, what is your philosophy about a staff member that has not complied with specific protocols regarding safety in the Lowell Public Schools?
Okay. As to the first part of the question, as you know, there are crisis intervention protocol manuals in every school. And so part of my thinking is that those have to be rewritten and revised very regularly. Things change. As recently as yesterday, we had some of the detectives from the Lowell Police Department come and address our faculty with regard to what's new in the city, what kinds of things are going on in the city, and apprising the teachers. The experts, detectives as one, go for regular training, and they come back and they meet with us and they apprise us of changes in how to handle crisis. For example, our manuals in the schools a few years ago used to tell us to use codes for particular types of crises, and now the direction is don't use a code. Get on the intercom and say this is a lockdown, it's a soft lockdown, it's a hard lockdown. So part of your question is with regard to that, the manuals have to be in place, they have to be updated constantly, people have to be held accountable for them. They have to know where they are. If you evacuate the building, the expectation is that the teacher has it in her hand along with the roster and those things. So I want to get to the last part of your question, then work backwards if that's okay, because when staff members don't comply, they have to be held accountable. It isn't funny. It's not like years ago when we had a fire drill once or twice a year and nobody really worried about it. These are serious times, and people have to be held accountable. We have sent written correspondence to high school teachers that have not complied with with our expectations in our lockdowns, or if we have the canines coming through. So we take it very seriously, and we hold people accountable and provide written documentation that they have not. Now, if it went on, if it happened again, the consequences would be more serious, because we take it very seriously as to that part of the question. We've had people down in the main office that have not complied, and we've had conversations with those people. It's not funny, and it's embarrassing for the school or the school administrator if law enforcement is there, or in some cases federal people come in, and it's embarrassing for the school and the school system if the professional staff isn't taking it seriously. So that's how I feel about it. As to the earlier part of your question, the protocols are in place. I think it's important when a crisis occurs that the building administrator does not react to it with a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's important to call in the experts. In the case of a suspicious object in the building or a bomb scare, the experts, we have conversations with the experts, the detectives, the police, and in collaboration with them, a decision is made to evacuate the building, to not evacuate, to lock down the building. So there is conversation around that before the decision is made. When the crisis passes, I think then it's important that the faculty is informed. They don't necessarily need, nor do they want, all of the details, but they want to know there was a situation, here's how we resolved it, the building is secure. The students, depending on the age of the students, who would handle it differently, but students would also need to be informed, and the parents as well. The parents, that sort of bring closure to it, is the information provided to the parents. Parents know that you cannot guarantee their safety 100% anymore, but what you can guarantee them is that you've made a good decision, an informed decision, and to the best of your ability, now the building is safe. And I think it's important to notify people. And actually, we were talking about this the other day, and my take on it is that you notify people. You can use paper, but I think we have a better chance on getting it home is if we use technology and we use ConnectEd and inform people that way. We have a much better chance of more parents reading it, and so I think they want the closure.
Thank you. Committee Person Leahy.
Thank you. I guess my question would be, could you maybe give us a few examples of how you might raise morale in the school district? Apparently, recently, we've had discussions that morale is down. So how would you propose that we raise morale amongst staff, and how do you balance that with keeping your focus on your, say, your said plan when you come in? Because obviously there's a natural, there's going to be a natural struggle between, someone who's coming in, the superintendent.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that and raise morale at the same time?
Well, I think morale, I think it's a very important factor, very important to discuss. If morale is low, teachers are not happy, a couple of things are going to happen. Some of them will leave. Some of them will hunker down and do what they need to, but really not help us move students ahead. And in a district this big, quite honestly, that is possible for that to happen. Teachers sort of take a back seat and do what they can, but nothing more. And I think, to answer your question, I would think that there are 4 or 5 things. If we ask teachers what the morale issues are, I would guess that they would say, here are some of the issues. We're looking for mutual respect. Part of it probably goes back to the discussion around discipline, that some of them are probably not happy with the disciplinary measures that maybe are occurring in some of the schools, so I think that's probably part of it. I think another part of it would be that they might feel as if they're not part of the decision-making, whether it's around budget or, more importantly, professional development or strategies that are used in the classroom. I would guess that they would say that would be an issue. I bet they would say that one of the most precious commodities that they don't have enough of is time. That a lot of their time during the day is regimented, and they don't have time to be in a professional learning community with other professionals. So as to how to handle that, I've actually started to think about that, because the time issue, and I do think it speaks to your question, John, because we talk a lot to teachers about classroom strategies and so forth, and they say to us, if we only had more time, we could do such a better job. The time that teachers have to work with their colleagues is very limited. The common planning time that's in place in many of the schools is 45 minutes a day, a couple of times a week, an hour after school, but no extended time. And I think that teachers would tell you that's what they're really looking. Teachers want to be in a professional environment. They want to work with their colleagues. They want to do the best they can. They want to feel as if they're respected and part of the decision-making. So one of the things I've actually been thinking about is how do we do that? And a couple of things that already occur in our district are superintendent's meetings. Those are part of the contract. So I would look at that, how to better use that time for the teacher, and have the teachers have some input as to how that time is going to be spent. I don't need to say how I'm going to come and work with them for an hour and a half. They know what they need, and they need to tell me how best is that time spent. So that would be one example. I've always felt, I actually might throw the whole interview on this one, but I'm going to say it. One of the things that's been a concern of mine since I came to Lowell is the length of the teacher's contract, 180 days plus an orientation day. There is no time in the teacher's contract for extended days of professional development. And I think that would do a lot to support teachers in terms of morale around a professional environment. If we ever got into a situation where we were not facing these tremendous budget cuts, it would be nice to be able to work with the union and look at extending the time for the teachers and have them compensated. I think that would be an amazing way. I think that that would be a tremendous way to build a learning community, and I think it would be money very well spent, because I think that's one of the things teachers are looking at. Not surprised. I haven't read that survey. I heard a little bit about it. I have not read it. I'm not surprised that there is a concern around morale, because I think we ask a lot of people. I think we ask a lot of teachers. We ask a lot of everybody, and we can't say to people anymore, just get a bigger plate if your plate's too full. I think it's my responsibility in building administrators to figure out how to support teachers around respect and finding them more time to do their work.
Committee Person Leary.
Dr. Jack, I think I think we can agree that Lowell is probably if not one of the best, probably the best urban school system in the state of Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. However, going with my premise that that's simply not good enough, and building upon what Mr. Leahy's morale question, balancing morale of our teachers and bringing us forth to where we're competitive with our neighboring suburban towns, what type of leadership will you exhibit? And how will you measure your leadership in order to compete with our suburban neighbors?
In terms of
performance, retention rates, graduation rates, in terms of how many students go to college, are they prepared for college as opposed to going to remediation classes, et cetera? Thank you.
Yeah. I think that part of that is knowing our population, which we do, and not making excuses, but knowing that approximately 40% or 45% of our students are second language learners. And those are the students, many of them that are struggling the most. You can walk into the high school on any day that the MCAS retest is being given and see that most of the students taking it as second language learners. So a lot of the work has to be around support for those students. When we do that, we're supporting everybody. But I think a lot of the work has to be done around to help our students. I've talked a lot tonight, I think, about strategies for second language learners. But what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about reaching out to parents, because I haven't said too much about that, and that's part of this equation as well. Parents want their children to do well. They just don't always have the means, either financially or otherwise, to support their students. They still deserve the best. And some of the things that I've been thinking about, actual examples of strategies, is instead of always having students come to the high school for tutoring, for work, we have to go to them. Some of the parents and some of the students have not had good experiences in schools. They're not going to come. And they can't come after school for tutoring because they work. So we are constantly trying to strategize as to how to support those students, either within the school day, or something I've just been starting to think about as I've gone through this process, is moving to them, to the Boys Club, to UTEC, to some of the places where students go, and helping them set up study centers there. Because it is about getting students in a routine to study. A lot of the kids that are the most fragile have no place to study. They want to, but they don't have it. They don't have technology. So a lot of it is around supporting that group of students.
Quick follow-up question to that then. So, and I'm in agreement with actually changing the dynamic, but what specific, I mean, as a leader, not, as a leader, give the scenario, you have a 3-year contract. Obviously, getting it done in 3 years is probably not going to be attainable, but what would you do to bring us where we are today and move us forward in 3 years to an area where we're coming closer to attaining that? What specific objectives would you?
I would look for the opportunity to, one example is to look for the opportunity to set up clinics for students, fragile students, off campus, where we know they are, help them get in a routine, and help them achieve. And I think, and that is not specific to the high school, that can happen at any level. Also, set up, we know that students will not, many students have to work and they can't come after school, so we have to constantly be looking at the schedules within the day to support students, knowing the population, and also reaching out to the parents. And so I would look for help from not only the school, but outside of the school, with the building, with the business partners, to help us support those learning objectives with students. The business partners, I think many of them are looking to get more involved in the school, and I think that's an opportunity waiting to happen, and it's another way to support students. And I, as the superintendent, would have to initiate that conversation and would have to make sure that building administrators followed through with that.
And finally, how would you measure the success or lack thereof success?
Well, an easy measure, of course, would be the standardized tests, but we could also measure it through the dropout rate. We could measure it through the failure rates within the classrooms. We watch those pretty carefully.
Would you prefer as a method of measuring success?
I think one of the, looking at grade distributions or failure rates within the schools, I think tells us the most. I think it tells us more. It tells us not only about students, it helps us with knowing about teaching strategies. It tells us a lot about the motivation of the student. It would tell us about the attendance of the students. So I would say the best measure is looking at the grade distributions and the attendance in the schools.
Dr. Jack, thank you for all your responses tonight. Now is the time to summarize your statements and tell us why you are the best candidate for superintendent of schools.
Okay. I will try. Thanks again for having me this evening. I hope I've articulated a plan, because I really do believe that I have a plan around literacy. I think it points to putting systems in place to support student instruction around that. That plan includes all the stakeholders. It includes the school committee, the building administrators, the business partners, most importantly, the children, the students that we're here to serve. I want to say that I'm not a manager, and I think you're not looking for a manager. You're looking for a leader. You're looking for an educational leader, an instructional leader with some managerial skills. But a manager is going to maintain the status quo. The leader is going to look for every opportunity to move the district ahead. The leader who's current in educational research has some background and practical knowledge in so many of the things that we've talked about tonight, working with English language learners, working with special education students. I think working with people to make informed decisions to bring the district ahead. When I was at the last interview, I talked about any new superintendent is going to come in with the goal of leaving the district better than he or she found it. And that would be my goal. The district has a lot of wonderful things going, but as we discussed tonight, we have a long way to go. And this person, if you choose her, is ready to hit the ground running on day one, not wait for 6 or 8 months. For me, it will be just moving across the street, and I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to work for you and carry out your policy, work together with you, because I know that if we're going to move ahead, we've got to have a unity of purpose. We've got to be willing to have some difficult discussions. But when the door opens, we're all on the same page, and that's for the students in the district. And I am very willing, and I want to be that person. I've had the big city experience. I've been an assistant superintendent and a brief interim superintendent in Manchester, New Hampshire. I've been a building principal at the middle school level, and now my most recent experience at the high school level, practical, day to day. I'm there every day, and I am well versed on the needs of the district and the needs of our students. I talk with them every day, and I think that that's the most important part of this, is talking with students and parents and understanding. My final comment, which I will repeat, is that I want to be your superintendent. I have submitted no other applications, and I'm not going to. I want you to choose me. If you don't, I'm going to go back to Lowell High School, and I'm going to continue to work hard there. I think you know me, and I think you know my work ethic, and I think you know my commitment and my sincere interest to this city, and I want to be the next superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jack. We appreciate your statements tonight, and we are thankful that you came before us.
Your Honor, would you entertain a 5-minute recess? Thank you.